Chapter 1: A rebirth triggered by a can of cat food. Stop, you can't get away. On the desolate, ruined wasteland, a raggedly dressed, filthy figure whose gender was hard to make out was surrounded by a group of sallow, emaciated men. They gathered there, eager and restless, seeming to covet something. Jiang Mian kept her head down and ran with all her might. If she stopped, it would be waiting to die. She wasn't stupid. After spending so long surviving in the apocalypse, she knew very well that only by running fast could one live in this chaotic place. Her eyes, hidden beneath a mess of hair, were full of murderous intent and regret. She was unlucky this time to be targeted by this group of people, and the best option was to abandon what she had and flee alone. But she hadn't eaten for a long time. If nothing entered her stomach soon, she would only be waiting to die. She didn't want to give up the things she had finally found. Jiang Mian clutched a can of cat food she had found in an abandoned building, holding it tightly to her chest. If she found it, it was hers. No one should try to snatch it away. She glared fiercely at the group of men. She and these people were from the same base, but they hadn't come out together. Everyone was a scavenger, so meeting by chance was normal. Jiang Mian had been through situations like this several times, but this time she had been careless. She was too happy when she found something, and others noticed something off, discovering that she had food in her hands. That was also why so many scavengers were chasing her. One of them, seeing she had no sense, immediately grew impatient. Stand still, leave the stuff, and we might let you go. If you dawdle here any longer, believe it or not, I'll beat you to death. Jiang Mian didn't buy his nonsense. She figured that the moment she put down the food in her hand, the others would swarm her. The man stared greedily at the cat food cans in Jiang Mian's arms. That was meat. In this apocalypse, he hadn't eaten meat in a long time. If he could take it home so his wife, who had just given birth, could eat some meat, she'd recover better and could come scavenging with him. With that thought, the man quickened his pace and was the first to rush toward Jiang Mian. Jiang Mian had long been on guard. When the man rushed over, he directly caught the dagger hidden in his sleeve and thrust it toward him. The man glanced down. Because he had charged so fast, it was too late to dodge now, and the dagger went straight into his throat. Hoo hoo. He clutched his neck, uttered two unintelligible low sounds, and collapsed with a thud. It was also at that stalled moment that the others caught up, and they surrounded Jiang Mian in a ring. The onlookers were startled by the scene. Their gazes darkened as they stared at the ground. The man whose neck was gushing blood made them swallow hard. After exchanging a look with their companions, they turned their attention to Jiang Mian, the one who had killed. At that moment one of the men shouted, "Let's all go at her together, kill her. Not only are the cans ours, the meat is ours too." Hearing that, Jiang Mian's heart jolted. After struggling and scraping by in the apocalypse for so many years, she instantly understood what he meant. These people were not simple scavengers, but scavengers and the base's most hated cannibals. She knew in her heart that her chances today were slim. But Jiang Mian did not want to be eaten. Realizing things were bad, she threw away the can and turned to run in the opposite direction. She had already killed one person, leaving only 4 men. She prayed that this group would split up to pick up cans in the other direction, and not all chase her. That would still give her a chance to fight back. However, things didn't go as she wished. How would the cannibals who had learned her identity let her go? If she returned and reported to the base, they'd have no chance of surviving. Seeing that the whole group was chasing her, Jiang Mian knew she was likely doomed and decided to go all out. She gripped the dagger tighter, intending to take someone down with her before she died. Those who saw her intent immediately hesitated. At that moment, one of the men was shoved forward and collided directly with the dagger's tip. Before Jiang Mian could draw her knife, the group took advantage of the moment and surged forward, raining punches and kicks down on her. Having only learned a few close combat moves, Jiang Mian quickly could no longer defend herself. She felt as if several of her ribs had been broken. She could even hear the crack of bone breaking. Summoning the last of her strength, she used a strip of cloth from her body to strangle a man to death. Perhaps it was the terror of facing death that left him unable to resist. The man struggled in vain and died in that suffocating, humiliating way. After killing 2 people, Jiang Mian had no strength or means left. In the end, she was beaten to death. Before she died, she vaguely heard them hurling insults, blaming her for being a woman, saying her chest was flat, that she didn't have 2 tails of flesh on her body, and the like. Jiang Mian glared at them viciously, never imagining that even after her death, she would still be subjected to their commentary. Then, as if her perspective had shifted, she watched those 2 dismember the other 3, and then argue over who would get pieces of her body. Just then, a commotion came from afar. They must have seen something because they actually left her corpse behind and left. She looked in that direction and saw only a blaze rushing toward her face, and then her body was burned to ashes. She couldn't help but think, is her corpse worth that much after death? That person actually spared no expense and used gasoline to burn her. Well, that's fine too, thanks to that kind person for taking care of collecting my body. The next second, Jiang Mian's vision dimmed. Pain. It hurts so much. My whole body hurts. It feels like ants are burrowing into the gaps in my bones. Not his isn't right. Wasn't I dead? How can I still feel pain? Jiang Mian opened his eyes and stared blankly at the clean white ceiling. Where is this? Where am I? The apocalypse has been going on for so long, how can the walls still be this clean and white? A place like this is probably only affordable for people from inside the base. And it feels like she's lying on a soft mattress. How is that possible? She slowly sat up and took in her surroundings. Facing her was a poster, and on it was a female celebrity she had liked a lot before the end of the world. She looked at her own hands in disbelief, somewhat rough, but fair-skinned. What is this? Reborn? Time traveled? Or arrived in a parallel universe? Just as her mind was in a tangle, the phone on the bed suddenly rang. Jiang Mian picked up the phone. She hadn't used one for years, and for a moment she didn't even know how to turn it on. Looking at the passcode on the phone, she couldn't remember what password she had set before. Tried several times. My own birthday, my bank card pin, 68 Snown worked. And the phone got locked. The phone kept ringing until time ran out, and it stopped automatically. Jiang Mian went over the passwords in her head. A flash of insight hit her. She suddenly slapped her forehead, delighted. Oh, I remember now, the password is birthday 888. The phone unlocked successfully, and the screen showed the person who had just called her. Su Chang'an. Long-sealed memories flooded her mind in an instant. She remembered this person. This man had come from the same orphanage as her, except he was very lucky and was adopted by a wealthy couple, who had also donated a large sum to the orphanage at the time. Later, she had also seen Su Chang'an during the apocalypse, but by then the 2 of them were already worlds apart in status. At the time, Su Chang'an was a high-ranking member inside the base, while she was just one of the many scavengers struggling to survive in the apocalypse. Jiang Mian had considered using their past acquaintance to get into the central district, but Su Chang'an no longer recognized her. After enduring so many disasters, her skin had turned dark, yellowed and coarse, her face bore scars left for self-preservation, and her hair was a mess. Just being near Su Chang'an's vehicle nearly got her killed. After that, she never inquired about Su Chang'an again. Why is Su Chang'an calling himself now? Too much time had passed. Jiang Mian no longer remembered that moment. She unlocked her phone and looked at the WeChat messages between the 2 of them. Suddenly Jiang Mian caught the key point. Su Chang'an, Mian Lingling really does like your bracelet. She'd even be willing to pay 1 million for it. To be honest, the quality of the bracelet on your wrist isn't very good. Lingling offering you 1 million, what more could you want? Jiang Mian looked at the bracelet on her wrist. It was a lush green color, appearing full of vitality. Right. She remembered this was precisely the time when Su Chang'an and Lan Lingling were spending a fortune to buy her bracelet. At first she didn't want to sell it, because she still hoped to use the bracelet she'd worn on her wrist since childhood to find her biological parents. But later. Chapter 2. It turns out the golden finger is mine. Later. It seemed they offered too much money, and besides, she wanted to get treatment for her younger brother's health, so she agreed. Jiang Mian put his hand up to his eyes and looked at the bracelet. But he felt doubtful inside. Why would Lan Lingling, a wealthy young lady, be willing to spend so much money on such an ordinary bracelet? And why does she seem so desperate to obtain this particular bracelet? Jiang Mian suddenly remembered that in his previous life he had heard Lan Lingling lived quite well, and that from time to time she would distribute relief grain in the scavengers' shacks. Where did she get so much grain? In the kind of weather of the apocalypse, storing grain was extremely difficult. So where did Lan Lingling get so much grain to give to others? Thinking this, Jiang Mian turned his gaze to the bracelet in his hand. Could Lan Lingling want this bracelet because it had some special property? According to the fantasy novels he often read, special divine artifacts needed to be bound by recognizing their master through dripping blood. Without further thought, Jiang Mian prepared to get out of bed to find something sharp to cut his palm and try the dripping blood test. She had just gotten off her bunk and put on her shoes when, at that moment, someone suddenly pushed the door open from outside. Seeing her come down, Jiang Mian said, "Jiang Mian, someone's been looking for you downstairs. He said he called and texted you but got no reply, was afraid something happened to you." After saying that, the girl looked at her with gossip. "What, are you in love? A boyfriend? That's so rude of you not even introducing him to us." Jiang Mian immediately knew who it was. The one who had just called and texted her was none other than Su Chang'an, right? Not wanting that girl with a poor memory to spread gossip, Jiang Mian explained, "I'm not dating him. That person should be my cousin." After hearing Jiang Mian's explanation, the girl sounded a bit disappointed and said, "Oh, no wonder, there was another girl with that boy." Jiang Mian looked at the girl as if she were crazy. There was a girl next to him, and she still asked if they were dating? Ridiculous. Of course, Jiang Mian didn't say that outright. She had more important things to do right now. "Hey Jiang Mian, what are you doing going to the bathroom? There are still people downstairs waiting for you. It's so hot today, aren't you going down to see them?" Bang. Jiang Mian slammed the door shut with a heavy thud, not bothering to answer the scheming girl outside. As for Su Chang'an, Lan Lingling, and the others waiting downstairs, if they want to wait, let them. After all, she wasn't the one out there getting baked by the heat. Reborn once, Jiang Mian no longer cared about how others looked at her. She just wanted to live well, and others' opinions were unimportant. Jiang Mian carefully sliced her palm, squeezing out a little blood with effort, rubbed the blood onto the bracelet, and watched it absorb the blood with a pleased heart. However, there was no further reaction. No space appeared in her mind, and the bracelet did not disappear. Jiang Mian frowned. Why was this? The bracelet had clearly absorbed blood, so why hadn't any other function manifested? Could it be that it hadn't absorbed enough blood? She steeled herself and slit a 5-centimeter cut. Blood immediately gushed out. Someone unaware might have thought she was doing something desperate, trying to kill herself. Jiang Mian quickly placed her hand on the bracelet. The bracelet, like a sponge, ravenously sucked up the blood, until Jiang Mian felt dizzy and faint from blood loss. As if the bracelet had been fully satiated, it finally stopped. The next second, a Rubik's cube, shrunk to innumerable times smaller, appeared before her eyes. Jiang Mian was stunned and instinctively tapped the cube in front of her with her finger. Then, in reality, she directly fainted where she stood, her consciousness appearing inside a motionless space. The space was vast. She walked around inside it and still couldn't find an edge. Just as she was wondering how to get out, in the next second, Jiang Mian saw that magic cube again. Only then did she realize the cube wasn't lit up everywhere. Aside from the piece she had clicked, a large portion of it remained dark. Jiang Mian tried tapping one of the darkened areas, and a line of text appeared before her. Breeding module. Can be unlocked after mental energy reaches a certain value. Planting module. Can be unlocked after mental strength reaches a certain value. Charging module. Manufacturing module. Spirit spring module. Jiang Mian's eyes brightened instantly. Isn't the cheat a bit too much? Then her expression darkened. Last life the jade bracelet was bought by Lan Lingling. How did she know that her bracelet had this function? Could it be that she was also reborn? In the previous life, after Lan Lingling had used her bracelet to store things, she never once thought of helping her. Even when Jiang Wuzai died, and she begged them to save her brother, Lan Lingling refused to lend a hand. Although if she put herself in his shoes, she also wouldn't save someone whose things were stolen. The fact remained that she was the one injured from beginning to end. and that was something she couldn't accept. In fact, what Jiang Mian didn't know was that this bracelet tailored itself to the owner. In its previous life, when Lan Lingling bled to claim it, she only obtained a non-static space. This is also why Lan Lingling would occasionally pull things out and gain a good reputation. Items left in the space for a long time would go moldy. She wouldn't eat moldy things, but she couldn't bear to throw them away either. Conveniently, her father was competing for the base commander position. So she used these discarded items to buy people's favor. When Jiang Mian opened her eyes again, she found herself lying on the ground. She slowly got up, looked at the fruit knife that had fallen to the floor, and directly stored it in her space. The next second, as her thoughts shifted, the knife reappeared in her hand. Jiang Mian looked at all of this with satisfaction. After cleaning up the blood on the ground, she suddenly saw herself in the mirror. Jiang Mian touched her face in disbelief. Fair skin, refined features, and waterfall-like long hair. Oh my God! Is this really me? It's been so long since I've seen this face. Looking at this face that was both unfamiliar and familiar, Jiang Mian smiled. And as she smiled, her tears fell. Jiang Mian wiped away her tears, her mind racing with random thoughts to distract herself. This appearance had caused her no small amount of disaster in her past life, but not this time. She had been reborn, gained a space ahead of others, and acquired the ability to protect herself. Everything would change. Jiang Mian touched his hair and sighed. It's gotten a bit long, I'll have to cut it when I have time. After composing himself, Jiang Mian finally opened the door and went out. Tch. Only after Jiang Mian had left did the girl who had notified him snort softly, then turn back to lie on her bed, watching TV and snacking, living a rather leisurely life. What does the outside heat have to do with her? She's still just a student. When Jiang Mian left, she didn't forget to bring an umbrella. Her skin still couldn't stand sun exposure. If she got sunburned, she'd have to waste time treating it, and she couldn't afford to waste time. Chapter 3. Want to buy my golden finger? When Jiang Mian arrived downstairs, she saw a man and a woman standing at the entrance to the girls' dormitory. At this moment, the girl said anxiously, Brother Chang'an. What's going on with Jiang Mian? It's been the whole evening, and she still hasn't made up her mind? Or does she think the price I offered is too low and is trying to raise it by doing this? This woman was Lan Lingling. At this time she had not yet developed the arrogance she would have 5 years after the apocalypse. Right now she almost wore her anxiety on her face. She was determined to get Jiang Mian's bracelet. If there were no space inside the bracelet, wouldn't she then end up repeating the same mistakes described in the book? That's why she was so anxious. Although Su Chang'an didn't understand why she wanted an ordinary jade bracelet so badly, the Lan family did have a reputation in An City. Recently, the Lan family's eldest miss had become his girlfriend, and Su Chang'an's status in the Su family had risen accordingly. There was no doubt about that. He could accept his girlfriend's strange behavior, and he was also willing to take action for it. Lingling, don't worry for now. Maybe Jiang Mian hasn't woken up yet. For her, trading a bracelet for $1 million is something she'd only get if she was extremely lucky. Jiang Mian just stood there, listening to the two of them talk about her. At that moment, Lan Lingling looked around and happened to see Jiang Mian. Her impatient expression immediately changed into a warm smile. She waved and called out, Mian Mian, over here. Jiang Mian closed her eyes for a moment, and came over to the two of them, smiling brightly as she looked at them. Chang'an Ji, Lingling Jia, so it was you who came to find me. My roommate was being vague just now. I even thought it was that group of people made me worry for a long time. This sentence served to explain why she had taken so long to come down. Lan Lingling naturally followed up on her words and asked curiously, what happened? Did Mian Mian encounter something bad? You can tell me after all, your Lingling Jia still has some connections in An City. Jiang Mian pressed her lips together, looked at the bustling scene around them, and said somewhat awkwardly, this doesn't seem like a very good place to talk. How about we go somewhere else to talk? Lan Lingling nodded. The stairwell was stuffy and hot, and there was no air conditioning. With the outdoor temperature at 45 C, just standing still made her sweat profusely. She had long since grown impatient waiting there. So when Jiang Mian suggested moving somewhere else to talk, she was naturally willing. The three of them went to a cafe. Su Chang'an used the excuse of going to the restroom, but actually went to pay the bill, leaving the two of them with some privacy. At that moment, Jiang Mian took the initiative and said, "To be honest, Lingling, I didn't sleep at all last night and only fell asleep at dawn. So I only just saw the messages you sent and came down in a hurry. It was only last night that I found out my younger brother was set up while out and ended up taking on a 50 million loan for someone else. Now the borrower has run off, and the debt collectors came after my brother. They said that if we don't come up with 50 million within 3 days, they'll cut off my brother's hands and feet. I had no choice and have been racking my brain for a way to save him." Her expression was painfully conflicted, her tone sorrowful, and there were still dark circles under her eyes, clearly the result of a sleepless night. Lan Lingling also knew her own temperament, the sort that's delicate and weak as a silk flower, so she didn't doubt Jiang Mian's words too much. She thought to herself, Jiang Mian wouldn't expect me to use 50 million to buy a bracelet, would he? In fact, the value of storage space alone cannot be measured by money. For something that exists above the world's natural laws, it could be called a priceless treasure without exaggeration. Besides, Lan Lingling knew that in another month the world would truly become an apocalypse. With various natural disasters sweeping everything away, everything would change, and even buying that space back for 50 billion would be worth it. Now I only need 50 million to get something like this. What a huge profit. After all, Lan Lingling is a wealthy young lady who grew up surrounded by money. To her, 1 million and 50 million are just the difference between a few more handbags and pieces of jewelry. Thinking this, Lan Lingling instantly put on a look of concern for Jiang Mian and said, "Huh? How could my younger brother do such a thing? Doesn't he know that standing guarantor for someone is risky and even illegal?" At this moment Jiang Mian couldn't help but shed 2 tears. My younger brother was also deceived. After all, that person was the second uncle of the family that adopted me. My brother never expected him to run away. She looked at Lan Lingling and said, "Sister Lingling, this bracelet. I'm not trying to be unreasonable, it's just that I really need the money, so, could you possibly?" What she had in mind was that getting 10 million from Lan Lingling would be enough, but she hadn't expected that this naive girl would actually wave her hand and take it all upon herself and say, "Is it just 50 million? That's nothing. Wait here, I'll have someone bring my card over right away. We'll do it cash for the bracelet, how about that?" Jiang Mian hadn't expected things to go so smoothly, but not yet. What if Lan Lingling goes back and finds the bracelet is off and can't do the blood bonding? Wouldn't that just bring trouble on herself? So she said, "Linglingji, those debt collectors insist on cash. Any money transferred over a network, they won't accept." Lan Lingling frowned. Feeling there were just too many details about Jiang Mian's situation, couldn't she have explained everything at once? And she wants cash. Where on earth is she supposed to get that much cash at once? Just as Lan Lingling was agonizing, Jiang Mian suddenly changed his tone and said, "Lingling sis, I know this is troublesome. How about we just forget it? At worst I'll hide away with my brother for the rest of our lives, so they can't find us." Hearing that, Lan Lingling immediately panicked. That won't do at all. If Jiang Mian really hid away, where would she go to find him? Wouldn't that mean she couldn't get the storage space she wanted? She grabbed Jiang Mian's hand and with a firm tone promised, "Mian Mian, don't worry. Leave this to Sister Lingling. I guarantee I'll get you 50 million in cash within 3 days." Jiang Mian nodded heavily, and watching the two leave satisfied, she suddenly let out a laugh. She had been really foolish, imagining Lan Lingling and Su Chang'an to be so terrifying, when in reality they were nothing more than a freshman and a recent college graduate. Having not experienced the end of the world, their minds were still very simple. She even thought that if she had suggested letting Lan Lingling pay some compensation first, Lan Lingling would probably have agreed for the sake of the space bracelet. But that wasn't necessary. Chapter 4: Using the cheat to start stockpiling. When Su Chang'an learned that Lan Lingling spent 50 million to buy a bracelet, he was completely stunned. Is this the extravagance of the heir to the top enterprise in an city? Spending 50 million like it's 50,000. So painless and meaningless. He felt even more determined to ingratiate himself with Lan Lingling. Jiang Mian finished the coffee on the table, then had the clerk pack some ice for her. The clerk agreed to her request without the slightest impatience. No wonder it was an upscale cafe. Jiang Mian opened her umbrella. A wave of heat hit her in the face, catching her off guard. Just stepped out of the air-conditioned shop. I really can't stand this heat wave. However, time is short. She must carry out her plan as quickly as possible. Before the apocalypse arrives and money still has enough buying power, convert all the cash on hand into supplies that will be needed later. Jiang Mian looked at the money on her phone. Just over 30,000. That was the money she'd earned from tutoring after high school and modeling for merchants, originally saved for the 4 years of college tuition. But now it seemed she wouldn't need it. But the purchasing power of that money was still too small. It was nowhere near enough to spend. She had only ordered some items from processing factories online, and she had already spent nearly everything. And she had only paid some deposits. In this situation, how are ordinary people without billions in assets and without any channels supposed to stockpile goods? Of course, the best move was to go straight to the source factories on a certain platform. So all day today Jiang Mian spent calling various factories. The first call she made was to the nearest bread factory. She specifically explained that they didn't need too many additives, just the taste of bread good enough to eat. Then she ordered 10 tons. Anyway, her storage space was big enough to hold all that bread. The factory kept insisting, "Ma'am, are you sure it's 10 tons and not that you chose the wrong unit?" Jiang Mian, "Yes. That's right. It really is 10 tons. I'm planning to open an influencer bakery soon, and these are all essential." Staff member, "But if the bread doesn't contain preservatives, its shelf life is only 3 to 5 days. You're ordering so much. After that period it will spoil. We won't accept returns on spoiled bread." Jiang Mian, "It's fine, I have plenty of money. I'm opening bakeries almost one per district. You don't need to worry about sales. Just make sure the goods are delivered on time." Finally, the people over there confirmed it had nothing to do with them. And only then did they take on the large order. Of course, the order was to be completed in batches. Asking them to make 10 tons of bread all at once was simply impossible. And Jiang Mian had already spent 10,000 yuan just from the first batch deposit. It immediately reduced the money in her hands by a third. And there was a reason for these loaves in her past life. She couldn't even get a piece of bread to eat. This stuff was far more precious than mantou or baozi. Even if she couldn't finish them, once the apocalypse base was established, she could still sell them to the bigwigs inside the base. By any calculation it was a surefire, risk-free deal. Jiang Mian started calling instant noodle factories again, choosing the cheapest kind with no logos or branding. Next was the flour mill, where she stocked low-gluten, medium-gluten, and high-gluten flours, plus some whole wheat flour and sweet potato starch. Anything commonly found on the market, she took some of. Then she moved on to the frozen goods factory, where Jiang Mian saw for the first time how cheap meat could be. A 500-gram chicken leg cost only 1.5 yuan. And Jiang Mian started ordering like crazy. She only stopped when, while buying some seasonings, she suddenly realized she had run out of money. She thought for a moment, then went straight to borrowing online. Because she wasn't yet 21, there weren't many apps that would lend to her. In the end she only managed to borrow 200,000, and all from those kinds of lenders whose interest rates were higher than the sky. Of course, Jiang Mian didn't care about any of that. By the time repayment came due, the world would already be at its end. Whether those people were even alive would be unknown. Who would have the time to come after her for debt? So Jiang Mian resumed her bye-bye lifestyle. As for the address, she put down a warehouse for rent located 20 kilometers away from her school, worried about being noticed for buying too much. Attracting the attention of some special department? Jiang Mian thought that was overthinking. How could this be considered buying too much? Compared with those who run real businesses, this was nothing. By the time the frozen goods market delivery arrived, they saw Jiang Mian wearing a mask, wrapped up tightly. The delivery person also thought, "It's so hot, and this young woman is bundled up like that. Isn't she afraid of the heat?" Perhaps seeing only Jiang Mian, the delivery driver uncle asked curiously, "Little girl, are you alone? There's a lot of stuff in here, and it's pretty heavy. Can you handle moving it by yourself?" Jiang Mian waved her hand and said, "It's fine, uncle. You can park the truck over there." My people will come unload it in a bit, they're eating inside right now. After the uncle drove the truck to the spot she indicated and sat down in the cab, Jiang Mian's eyes flicked and she said, "Uncle, you drove so far. It must have been hard on you. Let me treat you to a meal outside." The uncle hadn't expected Jiang Mian to be so warm. After a few refusals, he couldn't resist and followed her to a nearby noodle shop. During that time, Jiang Mian lied that her stomach hurt and went back to the storage to get medicine, telling the uncle to just return to the storage after he finished eating. Taking advantage of the time, she used her consciousness to store box after box of frozen goods into the space. Only then did she open the storage door, thinking the uncle would be back soon, and put some of the items outside the storage to make it look believable. Sure enough, it wasn't long before the driver uncle returned. He first asked about Jiang Mian's health, then sighed, "Miss, your workers are pretty efficient. It hasn't even been an hour, and they've finished unloading everything." Jiang Mian waved his hand and said with a smile, "Yeah. They're all college students, really quick at getting things done." They chatted a bit more, and when the driver saw it was getting late, he left. Jiang Mian hurriedly put the items into his space. Because of that delay of a dozen or so minutes, the drumsticks on the outside had almost thawed. It goes without saying how hot it must be outside now. Thinking that staying like this forever wasn't a solution, she couldn't keep guarding the place. Jiang Mian decided to look for some workers. She only needed someone to help unload her cargo. But if she was going to hire workers, she wanted ones who were more mobile, preferably day laborers. So she posted her needs on an app, and before long people began contacting her. After picking a few who looked brisk, she finally stopped. Chapter 5 Family. Soon, the day laborers she had chosen arrived. They were a group of older middle-aged people who were all sweating when they came. Jiang Mian didn't shortchange them either. 500 yuan a day. She recruited 3 groups of people, changing them each day. After 3 days, she wouldn't choose to live in this city anymore. By then, whatever happened in this city would have nothing to do with her. After giving them instructions about the work they normally needed to do, Jiang Mian finally left. She didn't return to school, but chose to go home. It was already around 6 or 7 in the evening. The grandmother who had taken her in was cooking in the kitchen, and in the yard a tall boy about 1.9 meters was playing. He wasn't afraid of the heat either. He was squatting under the tree, watching something. Jiang Mian walked over and squatted beside him, and only then discovered that he was watching ants move their home. Jiang Mian patted his brother's shoulder. "Jiang Wuzai, aren't you hot out here?" Jiang Wuzai paused, then realizing, suddenly hugged Jiang Mian. Jiang Mian, at 1.65 meters tall, looked like a child beside him. After being spun around several times by Jiang Wuzai, she felt a little dizzy and hurriedly patted his arm, asking him to put her down. She was already a bit blood-depleted this morning, and she still hadn't recovered. Seeing Jiang Wuzai sway like that made her want to vomit even more. Jiang Wuzai hurriedly put her down, hopped back into the room, and then fetched a stool for Jiang Mian. He grinned stupidly and said, "Sister, sit on the stool." Then Jiang Wuzai, being particularly perceptive, took a chilled watermelon from the refrigerator, cut half of it for Jiang Mian, and handed her a spoon. He took out a fan and fanned Jiang Mian. Jiang Mian contentedly enjoyed her royal life and sighed. Having a child at home really is useful. It's just that his head is a bit unclear on such a hot day. Instead of staying inside with the air conditioning on to be comfortable, he goes out to suffer. But Jiang Mian was also happy to go along with Jiang Wuzai's antics. Grandma carried the dishes and seeing this scene, immediately scolded, "You two thick-head fools, isn't the air conditioning on inside? Why are you sitting out here? It's hot as hell." Jiang Mian stuck out her tongue. Looking at the still feisty, capable and proud old woman, her mind drifted back to the previous life, to Grandma's illness at death's door, and she almost cried on the spot. She waved her hand and instructed Jiang Wuzai to move her designated chair back into the house. Feeling the coolness inside the room, she just thought she had been stupid to play this kind of heartwarming little game with Jiang Wuzai. How cool it was inside the room. Grandma had made several dishes: tomato and scrambled eggs, stir-fried pork with chili, and green beans with mincemeat, all dishes Jiang Mian liked to eat. The watermelon in her hand suddenly no longer seemed appetizing. To prevent herself from sneaking snacks, she picked up her phone and started ordering things online. Seeing those dishes also suddenly reminded her that she hadn't specifically ordered the tasty items from those restaurants. After the apocalypse, it would be hard to taste those delights again unless the chefs were still alive. But without ingredients, they couldn't reproduce the original flavors. So Jiang Mian began searching for nearby stores and contacting the owners. "Ma'am, are you serious? Our shop's specialty dishes, you want to order 100 portions of each?" Jiang Mian: "Yes, it's real. Once it's ready, just set it aside for me, I'll come by to pick it up later. May I ask you something presumptuous? You ordered so many dishes, what are they for?" "Oh, I'm planning to use them for an employee gathering. I heard people recommend that your restaurant's food is the best, so I didn't choose any other place, I specifically picked yours." When the restaurant owner heard that, it was as if someone had given a stimulant to a donkey. He immediately became excited. "All right, don't worry, sir. The food at my place will definitely not disappoint you. Just wait and see." "All right." After hanging up, Jiang Mian made another call to a different place on the same street, speaking for over 10 minutes straight. Grandma brought over the last bowl of chicken soup. Seeing the two of them like that, she said, "Okay, Mian Mian Wu Zai, stop playing around and come eat. I made all your favorite dishes." At the table, starving from a day without food, Jiang Mian began to gobble down his meal, as if he hadn't eaten his fill in 800 years, which terrified Grandma Jiang. She looked at Jiang Mian anxiously, not knowing what grievances her granddaughter had suffered outside. Today she suddenly called, saying she wanted to come home and eat the food she cooked. So she hurried to the market to buy the freshest chicken, and deliberately simmered it over low heat on the gas stove for 3 hours to ensure it would be tender and juicy. But seeing her granddaughter like this, she suddenly felt a pang of heartache, yet didn't dare disturb her mood while eating. It wasn't until Jiang Mian glanced up when she had a moment, and found her grandmother watching her, that she said, "Eat Nai. Why aren't you eating?" Grandma Jiang hesitated, then couldn't hold back and asked, "Mian Mian, what's wrong with you? I've never seen you like this before." Hic. Jiang Mian couldn't help but hiccup, then said, "It's nothing. It's just that something happened recently that made me realize how precious food is. From now on I will never waste food again just to lose weight." Hearing that was the reason, Grandma Jiang breathed a sigh of relief. Looking at Jiang Wuzai, who was also devouring his food, she was so angry she slapped him. Eat, you're still eating? Your sister is already full. You've had enough to eat for today, no more." Jiang Wuzai finished the last sip of chicken soup before stopping. He rubbed his swollen stomach and looked at the two of them, saying, "Nurse, my stomach hurts." Grandma Jiang looked at him helplessly, and quickly went inside to get him some digestive tablets. Her foolish grandson was like this, always unable to control his appetite, eating until he was stuffed and not knowing when to stop. Jiang Mian looked at Jiang Wuzai, told him to lie down, and began to rub his stomach herself. But another scene floated through his mind. Jiang Wuzai, missing one arm, smiled foolishly. He took a packet of moldy bread from his pocket and handed it to her. "Cease. Food, eat here for you." Only then did she see the dagger embedded in her brother's back. Jiang Wuzai had been wounded long before. He had held on with his last breath just to bring her this bread. "Sister, it's raining. Why does the rain taste salty?" Jiang Mian wiped his tears and scolded angrily. "What nonsense are you talking about? Don't move around, I can't find your stomach." "Oh." Grandma Jiang gave him a few digestive tablets, then told him to go wash the dishes to get some activity. Chapter 6: Raising Money Through Loans. Although Jiang Wuzai was a bit dim-witted, he was still obedient and did as he was told. After sending Jiang Wuzai away, Grandma Jiang turned to Jiang Mian. She was a sharp-witted woman who had raised her grandchildren alone. If she had been a simple old lady, she would have been bullied to death. So from the first moment she saw Jiang Mian, she knew Jiang Mian had something on her mind. There were only the two of them present. So she asked directly, "Mian Mian, you didn't come back this time just to see Grandma and Wuzai, did you? Is there something else you need to do?" Jiang Mian already knew that nothing could be hidden from Jiang Suiyu. She had thought of this herself, well aware that in the face of disaster, her own efforts alone wouldn't be enough. She said bluntly, "Grandma, I think I've acquired memories that don't belong to me. To be precise, I seemed to have memories of the next few years. I dreamt that the current heat would continue to intensify until it could boil water directly. And then, Jiang Mian recounted her dream in full, leaving nothing out. The more Jiang Tsuyu listened, the more incredulous she felt. However, looking at Jiang Mian's expression, she knew she wasn't lying. You mean the world will be destroyed? Jiang Mian shook his head. I don't know what the future will be like. I only know that in a few years' time, the world will be such that people don't live like people, and ghosts don't look like ghosts, all struggling to survive. They don't understand what it means to be alive, but they still want to live. Jiang Tsuyu persisted. What if this is just a dream? Only that you made it a bit more realistic, and all of this is fake. No, it's not fake. All of this is real. I, too, suspected it at first, but the things that happen in the dream overlap infinitely with reality. In the dream, the woman who wanted to buy my bracelet this time was willing to pay a price 100 times higher than the bracelet, like there was something extraordinary about it. The woman from my last life lived such a happy life, with endless food and people fawning over her. So I wondered if there was something different about this bracelet, and I experimented, and in the end I discovered there was a space inside. A space, do you understand? A place where you can put things. And it's unaffected by the outside world. Do you know how important that is? Saying that, Jiang Mian also demonstrated it for Jiang Tsuyu. She waved her hand, and a box of frozen chicken breasts immediately appeared on the table. Jiang Tsuyu was startled and hurriedly pressed down Jiang Mian's hand. All right, quickly put these things away. She looked at Jiang Mian and admonished, you must not tell anyone about this, not even your younger brother. He's not very scheming and can easily be led into saying things, understand? Jiang Mian nodded. She had deliberately told Grandma, precisely for Grandma's resources. Otherwise, what do you think allowed them to live in such a large house and in city? Of course, Grandma has her own channels. She was in charge of sourcing agricultural products for supermarkets. Although she's retired now, her old connections still exist. This is why Jiang Mian was willing to expose the space, because the gains would outweigh the costs. Jiang Tsuyu thought of it in an instant and hurriedly said, then I'll contact the people I knew before and have them supply us with some fresh vegetables and meat. But we need to be careful doing this. If someone notices something off, it would be easy for them to trace it back to us. Jiang Mian nodded, then said, Grandma, use all the money you have to buy these things. Don't worry about not having enough space. I'm planning to rent several warehouses in other cities to store them. When someone asks later, we'll just say they're intended for opening a self-service business. If the money isn't enough, don't worry either. A large sum will come in 3 days. Grandma nodded. Just then, Jiang Mian thought of something and had Grandma Jiang take out the 2 of their ID cards. She started using their IDs to take out all kinds of online loans. Grandma Jiang even directly borrowed over 600,000 yuan. As for Jiang Wuzai, because he had just turned 18, he only managed to borrow 120,000 yuan, and half of that was obtained through nude loans. A total of 770,000 yuan in hand. Grandma Jiang refused to take the money. They're just some vegetables, they don't cost that much. Keep the money and buy things you need. You surely understand natural disasters better than I do, so you'll know what to buy and use. Okay. Jiang Mian glanced at the time and realized it was already 10 o'clock. 3 hours had passed without her noticing. At that moment, someone began calling her. It was a call from a nearby restaurant. Jiang Mian said so and got ready to drive Grandma Jiang's van out. However, she was called back by Grandma Jiang. I remember you haven't gotten your driver's license yet, right? What car are you going to drive? Jiang Mian slapped her forehead, suddenly remembering that she had only learned to drive after the end of the world. She indeed didn't have a license now. Although she could drive, she couldn't get around driving without one. She definitely didn't want to be arrested for driving without a license, just after being reborn. Wouldn't that make a huge joke of things? The first person in history to be reborn. And yet it was because of hoarding that he ended up inside. Just thinking about it is hilarious. So Granny Jiang drove, Jiang Mian sat in the front passenger seat. Jiang Wuzai sat in the back, and he went along too. Granny Jiang meant that a tall guy who's 1.9 meters didn't grow that height for nothing. With that strength he could help carry some things. Jiang Mian put on her mask and got out of the car. She deliberately reminded Jiang Wuzai that after they went out this time, he would need to play the role of a mute deaf person who couldn't speak. Jiang Wuzai thought it was some new game, so he nodded and agreed. When the owner saw Jiang Mian, he looked her up and down in surprise, and after confirming it was her, he said, "I didn't expect someone so young to be the boss. Come, we've packed everything for you, guaranteed honest and fair using only fresh ingredients, definitely not pre-made food." Jiang Mian casually opened a few boxes, and after confirming they indeed contained fresh ingredients, he nodded. After paying, the shop owner also helped carry the things. He wiped the sweat from his head and sighed, "It's really hot today. It's already evening, but it still feels like over 30 degrees. If it keeps this hot, I'm thinking of going to work at a cold drink shop." Jiang Mian's mind stirred. Cold drinks? Nice. Right. How could she forget something so important? If this heat keeps up, the outdoor wiring will start to burn out and get damaged. Then it'll be hard to even run the air conditioner. Not only does she need to prepare a generator, she also has to get some ice. Chapter 750 million in hand. So, after Jiang Mian finished collecting the food she had ordered, the car was filled up several times before she asked her grandmother where they could get ice made professionally. Grandma Jiang thought for a moment, then made a phone call. The two seemed to be old acquaintances. After chatting for a long time, she said, "Right, isn't the weather getting hotter? I wanted to ask if you have any extra order slots there. I want to do some ice business." Grandma Jiang gestured, asking how many ice blocks she needed. Jiang Mian took out a note she had prepared long ago. On it was a full list. 100 tons of purified water ice. This kind of ice melts into drinkable water, which is the best choice. Then she asked for 10 tons of filtered mineral water ice, a small luxury she wanted to indulge in. Grandma Jiang frowned and asked softly, "Why not choose some ordinary tap water?" Jiang Mian shook his head. Some things were better left unsaid for now. It wasn't until after they hung up that Jiang Mian explained, "If it's just ordinary tap water, and I want to turn it into ice, I can do it myself, so there's no need to waste money on that." Alright then. Taking advantage of the evening, Jiang Mian started riding her electric bike around, bought a bunch of freshly grilled skewers from various barbecue stalls, and also ordered some crayfish, getting a little from each place. The portions weren't large, the kind meant for 8 or 9 people, so it didn't attract attention. After finishing all that, she finally went to bed. Having slept soundly and waking up refreshed, at that moment the magic cube in her mind began trembling incessantly, as if it had Parkinson's. Jiang Mian thought it must be malfunctioning. This thing was her guarantee in the apocalypse. Hurriedly sank his consciousness into the magic cube, and suddenly found selectable modules appearing on it. Planting area can be activated. Breeding area can be activated. Spring water space can be activated. Time acceleration can be activated. Jiang Mian looked at the modules that could be activated, some small modules, some mid-level modules still in an unactivatable state. She suddenly realized that her spiritual power seemed to have strengthened. This should be the sign that her past life self and her current self had completely merged. She thought for a moment. It seemed that the cultivation space was what she needed most right now. As for planting space and spring water space, they aren't something I urgently need right now. For vegetables and fruits grown there, she can buy them first and then put them into the space. When taken out, they'll be just as fresh as ever. As for the time acceleration module, she definitely doesn't need it. Time acceleration is literal, it speeds up the flow of time. She definitely didn't want it. The current net worth space was very useful, so she didn't need that. She would only choose to activate it later after her planting and breeding spaces had both unlocked. Once she decided to activate the breeding module, Jiang Mian's consciousness instantly arrived at a fence. As far as the eye could see was a stretch of fenced enclosures, endless in every direction. She touched the soil on the ground, then suddenly went outside and pulled up the chili seedlings that Grandma Jiang had planted, and replanted them inside the breeding space. However, the soil in the breeding space was like stone, it looked like dirt, but nothing could be planted in it. She sneered. It looked like this wool couldn't be pulled after all. Just then, an exclamation mark on the fence wall caught her eye, and she clicked it to take a look. 1 silver coin can unlock the automatic operation system. Silver coins? What are those? Silver coins are rewards obtained from selling crops or livestock. Jiang Mian realized that this magic cube seemed a bit smarter now. It could even answer the questions in his mind. But looking at the empty fenced pens, she could tell there wasn't even a single cent left. So after that, she started asking Grandma to keep an eye on any livestock that might still be alive. Grandma Jiang didn't ask many questions. She just did as she was told. Grandma Jiang took out the property deed and asked Jiang Mian, "Should we sell the house? That could get us some money, couldn't it?" Jiang Ming nodded. She was thinking the same thing. 2 days later, when Lan Lingling received the bracelet and found she couldn't open the space inside, she would certainly know what had happened. By then, they would only have to worry about Lan Lingling's revenge. To get the money faster, Granny Jiang sold the house at half price. The house sold quickly. Granny Jiang busied herself with the paperwork while preparing to move. When others asked, she only said that her grandson was useless, had gotten into trouble outside, and urgently needed money. Days passed like that. On the 3rd day after her rebirth, she suddenly received a call from Lan Lingling. It turned out Lan Lingling had already saved up enough cash and was just waiting for her to come and collect it. Jiang Mian followed the directions Lan Lingling had given and went straight to the 2nd floor of the bank. Seeing the piles of RMB that took up 2 whole tables in front of her, Jiang Mian's breathing quickened. It was the first time she had ever seen so much cash. Seeing her like that made Lan Lingling feel even more pleased with herself. Although seeing so much money laid out was indeed shocking, she had already gotten used to it and wasn't particularly surprised anymore. She looked at Jiang Mian and said, "The money is all here now, and there will be someone to inspect the bills for you. You can give me the items, right?" Jiang Mian nodded. After confirming that the 50 million were all real bills, he had the items packed up and loaded into the van. In front of Lan Lingling, she took off the bracelet from her wrist. "Here you go, payment in hand. Goods on delivery. You can inspect the bracelet now. All sales final, no returns or exchanges." "Alright." After the deal, Lan Lingling suddenly said, "The weather outside is getting hotter. I suggest you stock up on food so that if it gets too hot later and food becomes a luxury, you'll be prepared." Jiang Mian halted in his tracks, suddenly feeling that he seemed a bit too villainous in front of Lan Lingling. No way. Is Lan Lingling crazy, and is she making her nervous too? She just bought someone else's bracelet with 1 foot, and then said something like that with the other. Does she really not fear others suspecting her? Or is she feeling invulnerable? She turned her head and looked at Lan Lingling with some bewilderment. "Linglingji, what do you mean by that? Is there some disaster coming in the future?" Lan Lingling regretted her words as soon as she said them, hurriedly covering her mouth and shaking her head. "It's nothing. I just said it casually." "Oh, I was just saying something casually." Jiang Mian sat in the van and, while en route, went inside to collect everything that had been stored in it. The driver had no idea what had happened the whole time. He only left after dropping Jiang Mian off at her destination. Seeing the pile of money stacked 10 meters high in the space, she released it and lay down on top. The scent of money is intoxicating. Watching Grandma Jiang, who had packed everything, the 3 of them put on a show as they loaded things into the car. In reality, only some of the lighter items were carried. The heavier things she had placed into the space, and the 3 of them left the city directly. Chapter 8 Transaction complete, leaving the country. Lan Lingling clutched the bracelet, overjoyed. Looking at the bracelet, she prayed inwardly. "If heaven has let me obtain you, then it means we are fated. Since Jiang Mian could open a space, I certainly can too." Saying that, she opened the book and flipped to the moment when Jiang Mian opened the space. The book read, "When Jiang Mian was arguing with Lan Lingling deliberately pushed Jiang Mian, causing him to fall to the ground. His palm scraped and bled, and the blood happened to smear onto the bracelet, thereby opening the space and leading him to a life of being embraced by many in the apocalypse." Lan Lingling put down the book in her hand. She found this book a month ago at the holiday villa. At the time, she opened it out of curiosity because one of the supporting characters had the exact same name as hers. The more she read, The more shocked she became the identity and status of Lan Lingling, her parents' names, everything matched her real life exactly. However, because she didn't believe it, she didn't take it seriously. But when she met Su Chang'an and saw that he was exactly as described in the book, with a mole at the corner of his eye, she was stunned. Inside, Su Chang'an is also considered a protagonist, so the book describes him in great detail. After comparing, Lan Lingling realized that what was written in that book was very likely true. She then tried to find some other relatively famous supporting characters, and she was certain that everything that happened in the book seemed to be real. Because of this, when she saw Jiang Mian, her attention was immediately captured by Jiang Mian's bracelet. She decided she had to get that space. Now looking at the bracelet she had spent 50 million to buy, she steeled herself and cut her finger. However, the blood droplets landed on the bracelet with no reaction, and the blood simply slid off. How can this be? How is this possible? Why can't I open the storage space? Lan Lingling couldn't believe it. If she couldn't open the storage space, then what would she do? Wouldn't her plan be completely ruined? No. She was unwilling to accept it. Something must be wrong somewhere. This can't be. She examined the bracelet carefully, comparing it with the description in the book. After confirming the bracelet was real, she turned her attention to Jiang Shue's blood. Could it be that this bracelet requires Jiang Mian to open it herself in order to access the storage space inside? If that were really the case, she wouldn't mind Jiang Mian opening the storage and then killing her. In this chaotic era, killing one person was nothing. What would it even count as? With that in mind, Lan Lingling began to get Jiang Mian's number from Su Chang'an. Su Chang'an was still asking with concern, "What's wrong, Lingling? Is there something wrong with the bracelet?" Lan Lingling was annoyed at the moment, and didn't feel like talking much. She only said she wanted to ask Jiang Mian a few questions, and she brushed him off. Jiang Mian saw an unfamiliar number on her phone, and guessed it was probably Lan Lingling calling, so she didn't hang up. Instead, she answered the call. Sure enough, Blue Lingling's voice came through the phone instantly. "Mian Mian, where are you right now? I have some questions about the bracelet." Jiang Mian said warily, "Is that Lingling? You called me. Has something happened with the bracelet?" Blue Lingling tried hard to suppress her urgency and said, "Where are you now? There are some things we need to discuss in person." "Sorry, Linglingji. After I used your money to pay off my brother's debt, those people refused to acknowledge it and said there was still 10 million in interest. We really had no choice. Now the whole family has to leave the country to hide. I have to go. I'm about to board the plane, so I'll hang up now. Beep beep beep." Hearing the busy signal from the phone, Lan Lingling angrily threw her phone. Going abroad? Damn it, the book didn't mention this. What's wrong with her? The butterfly effect couldn't be this big. She immediately ran downstairs and used the landline to call her father, asking him to find out where Jiang Mian was now. Lan Lingling's father had always indulged his daughter endlessly. After hearing her request, he sent someone to do it right away. In less than 2 hours, Jiang Mian's information appeared before Lan Lingling. Seeing that Jiang Mian had indeed boarded a plane abroad, and that her family had already moved out yesterday, it matched what Jiang Mian had said. Lan Lingling sat deflated on the leather sofa. This damned butterfly effect. How could this happen? What about my space now? Jiang Mian didn't care about any of that. She simply boarded a plane and went to Country M. This time she came out intending to get some guns, but the controls at home were far too strict, and it was easy to get traced. She also feared there might be sting operations, so she simply came here. As for how to obtain the guns, she naturally had a way. She dug out the contact she had long kept sealed inside herself. Mylen. Soon, a blonde young man driving a convertible arrived at the airport. "Long time no see, Mian." Jiang Mian looked at him and smiled. Malin's parents had worked in Huagua before. The two of them met in high school, and Malin had been harboring designs on her back then. Jiang Mian didn't mind Malin's familiarity much, mainly because she needed his help, so lowering herself a bit was normal. Malin was driving, and the girl kept glancing at Jiang Mian. Before getting off the plane, Jiang Mian had deliberately put on light makeup, which made her already pretty face even more enchanting. Myron couldn't deny that his heart stirred once again. Jiang Mian took in Myron's little thoughts at a glance. She looked at him and said, "Are there any relatively cheap houses for rent here? I might be staying in country M to live from now on." Hearing that, Myron was momentarily stunned. "Mian, what exactly happened to you in Huagua that you were forced to flee the country?" On the topic, Jiang Mian put on a despondent look. "I offended a woman in Huagua. Right now they're probably searching all over Huagua for me. Tell me, isn't that a big deal?" Myron shrugged. He had thought Jiang Mian was joking. When he realized she didn't want to talk about it, he didn't press her. Instead, he recommended a few relatively safe houses. Finally, Jiang Mian chose the cheapest house and rented it. Mylan disapproved and said, "Mian, actually I don't recommend you rent here. Although the rent is cheap, the country has been chaotic lately and robberies are common." This was exactly what Jiang Mian wanted, so he said, "It's fine, I'll only be staying for a while. I don't think I'll be that unlucky, right?" Chapter 9: Stockpiling Abroad. After renting the apartment, Jiang Mian planned to buy some things. After saying goodbye to Myluan, she checked the map and found a few nearby areas that were fairly chaotic, planning to try her luck. She had barely gotten out of the car when a gunfight broke out not far away. Watching everyone else start to run away, Jiang Mian instead ran toward the area of chaos. Only then did she see clearly. It was a group of robbers wearing hoods who had just robbed a jewelry store. The police arrived quickly. Maybe because of the scorching heat they didn't want to stay outside on duty, so they just opened fire from inside. In less than 10 minutes they had dealt with the robbers inside. Jiang Mian missed the chance to take advantage of the turmoil. She picked up her phone and called Mylan. Mylan anxiously found Jiang Mian. "Mian, are you alright? Did you get hurt anywhere?" Jiang Mian shook her head, then began to sob softly. "Mylan, it's so terrifying. This place is so scary." Mylan comforted Jiang Mian. Seeing the moment was right. Jiang Mian then made her request. "Mylan, do you know where one can get a gun here?" Seeing Mylan's surprised expression, Jiang Mian realized she had been a bit hasty, and hurriedly added, "I was bullied back home, and on the first day after I came abroad this happened again, so I need to be able to protect myself." Mylan felt conflicted, but looking at Jiang Mian's pitifully innocent face, he began to hesitate again. Mylan brought Jiang Mian to a shooting club. They found the owner of the shooting club. He was a middle-aged man, a bit plump for middle age, but one could still tell he was full of strength. From the conversation between Mylan and the owner, Jiang Mian learned that the owner was Mylan's uncle. "Heard you want to buy a gun?" Jiang Mian looked at Myluan and Myluan nodded. The boss noticed this scene and gave a meaningful smile. "Yes, uncle, I want to buy a gun, to protect myself. Can you fire a gun? If you can't, then a gun in your hands is just a toy." Jiang Mian shook her head. Actually, in her past life she had handled a gun, but back then bullets were a non-renewable resource. Even if she had a gun, she rarely had chances to use it. Her aim wasn't any good either, so she might as well just say she couldn't shoot. The boss led Jiang Mian to the shooting range, went over the shooting stance and essentials with her once, and then asked Jiang Mian to demonstrate for him. Jiang Mian held the gun, eyes focused intently on the target. With a bang, the recoil from the gun jolted her, leaving her arm a bit numb. But the 8 that suddenly appeared on the screen above the target left the boss exceedingly pleased. He clapped his hands. "Not bad, very good, you Chinese really are talented." After speaking, he looked at Myluan and said, "Myluan, stay with this young lady and practice with her for a while. Explain the rules of the shooting club. Then come find me later." Jiang Mian didn't understand where this was going, so she looked at Myluan. The shooting club is actually also a legal place to buy guns. Usually they sell to foreigners like you. They actually cooperate with the authorities. Only those who register as internal members for 99,800 at the shooting club can purchase firearms. So, hearing that reply, Jiang Mian breathed a sigh of relief. Isn't it just 99,800? She has plenty of money now. Jiang Mian said bluntly, US dollars or RMB? US dollars. After Jiang Mian paid at the front desk, he looked at Myluan, who checked a message on his phone and led Jiang Mian down to the basement. "Let's go. My uncle is waiting for us inside." As Jiang Mian descended the stairs, A sense of alertness rose within him. Facing two men he wasn't that familiar with, he couldn't possibly remain as calm as he appeared on the surface. When the two reached the basement, they saw the owner of the shooting club already waiting for them there. The boss had a dozen or so cases laid out in front of him, all of them filled with firearms. The boss's attitude was noticeably more enthusiastic than at first. "This beautiful young lady, come pick out the weapon you fancy." Jiang Mian stepped forward and looked at the weapons that had already been assembled. She picked them up to try them. They felt pretty good to the touch, much better than the gun she had found during the apocalypse that only had 2 bullets. She wanted them all, but dared not be too extravagant, so she could only choose a Desert Eagle, an AK, a Zhongxing Pingding Dongsheng Pingdeng, and finally picked up a regular handgun. The boss had no objections to this. To him, these people were just profiteers off national calamity. Who cared who bought these guns? For the 4 types of guns ammunition, Jiang Mian also had the boss provide 1,000 rounds of each. She wanted more, but the boss said that was all the ammunition he could provide. And she must not betray him after something went wrong, otherwise he would make Jiang Mian wish she were dead. Jiang Mian didn't care about the boss's threats at all. She hurriedly reassured him, "Don't worry, boss. I would never reveal you. You're just an ordinary owner of the shop where I bought the membership." When she paid and left, Jiang Mian still felt a bit of pain in her chest. Looking at the remaining guns, to be honest, she really wanted to take them all. She even thought about, when she had the chance to take down the boss and Milun, robbing all the guns from here. Of course, hiring someone to handle matters requires compensation. After Jiang Mian took the guns home, she put them straight into her space. Then he asked Mylen to go to a restaurant to eat. Of course, Mylen chose the place. After all, in a foreign land, Jiang Mian didn't know which local food was good here. Eating the familiar taste of home, Jiang Mian looked at Mylen in surprise. "I was worried you wouldn't be used to the local flavors, so I specially brought you to eat Hua country's cuisine. How is it? Not bad, right?" Jiang Mian gave a thumbs up, lavish with praise. "Exactly the same taste, Mylen. You are really so thoughtful. I'm going to fall completely in love with you." Visibly, Mylen's face began to flush when he heard that, the redness spreading down to his neck before it finally stopped. Unfortunately, Jiang Mian missed the whole scene. She was looking at the messages on her phone. It turned out that she had previously ordered a bunch of steaks, and the seller had just messaged to say the goods had arrived. Jiang Mian told them to leave it at the dock container area. She looked up at Myron and said awkwardly, "Sorry, Myron. My friend just messaged me some things I ordered have arrived. I need to head back first." "It's okay. Do you want me to take you?" "No, that's all right." After saying that, Jiang Mian prepared to check out and leave, but was told someone had already paid. Jiang Mian looked at Mylen curiously. Mylen blew her a flying kiss. After Jiang Mian left, she sent him a message. "We agreed I would treat you. Why did you secretly pay again?" Chapter 10 Surprise. The Fireseed Project. The next second Mylen replied, "Letting a lady treat me to a meal would make me feel very ungentlemanly." Jiang Mian put his phone away thinking, "After I leave, I'll remind Myron to stock up on more food." In his last life, because he was always at the bottom, he didn't know what had happened in Country M, but he had heard that there had already been riots there before the apocalypse. With food scarce, it became even more chaotic, and supposedly many people died. But it was all just hearsay. When he arrived at the dock, facing the waiting workers, Jiang Mian gave them some extra tips, and they were naturally overjoyed. After confirming everyone had left, she waved her hand and directly stored the steaks, cheeses, butter, and so on into her space. There were also some animals among them, such as turkeys, broilers, dairy cows, beef cattle, and specialties like salmon. Her main goal was to expand the variety. The live livestock were put into her breeding space. Living animals couldn't be placed into the static space, only dead livestock could be. The breeding space already had many more livestock, and she also learned the use of silver coins. 10 eggs could be exchanged for 1 silver coin. Silver coins could upgrade the fenced hut, giving it simple abilities like scooping waste, feeding, and collecting goods. 1 silver coin only provided a week of automatic operation. If she wanted to continue this effortless life, she would have to work hard to obtain silver coins. Stingy Jung Mian naturally didn't choose to spend silver coins on this function. She just handled things with her consciousness each day. Isn't that just losing an hour of sleep? Anyway, after the apocalypse she had plenty of time. Now it was just a bit tiring. She still had quite a few livestock in her space now, including 10 dairy cows, mainly because Jiang Wuzai liked to drink milk. To have a variety, she bought several breeds of dairy cows. Even when she went abroad she didn't forget to buy a few cows. Chickens, ducks, fish, cattle, sheep, and pigs. She lacked none of these and could basically be self-sufficient. Before long, another shipment arrived. After Jiang Mian finished receiving it, she continued to wait. For 3 whole days she repeated this routine. Of course, she wasn't actually staying in the same warehouse the entire time. Although she told people the fishing boat had taken her away, nearby residents could still see her. So she switched to several different warehouses. For 3 days straight, she spent her afternoons at the shooting club practicing with guns, and her nights collecting supplies, living quite comfortably. The blazing sun did not frustrate her. Instead, it made her even more impatient. After arriving at the club, Jiang Mian discovered the boss had actually gotten compound bows, and she suddenly wondered if she should buy some too. Then, persuaded by the boss's enthusiasm, Jiang Mian bought 5 compound bows and arrows costing nearly 10,000. Boss, I've spent several million at your place already. Could you help me ship them home? Finally, under Jiang Mian's financial onslaught, the boss personally drove her home. Jiang Mian wasn't afraid the boss would have ill intentions. Now in the boss's eyes, her relationship with Milun was no ordinary thing. Besides, with her meager charms, she simply wasn't worth the boss's attention. She had stayed here for 2 weeks. Originally she had planned to stay only 1 week, but the boss knew so much that she kept learning things from him. That day, after training at the shooting club as usual, she returned to the dock. However, the next second, a voice she had never heard before sounded in her mind. Detection. The planet you inhabit is undergoing a new round of cleansing. The humans parasitizing this planet are about to face annihilation. Consequently, the seed plan is now officially activated. Yes, no to join the seed plan? Jiang Mian was stunned. She thought it was the Rubik's Cube in her mind giving a reminder. But when she opened it she found that this thing bore no resemblance to the Rubik's Cube in her head. In fact, the Rubik's Cube in her mind moved away from it disdainfully, as if this thing were some kind of calamity. She clicked open the introduction to Fireseed Project. Jiang Mian promised this was the first time she had ever read an explanation so carefully, not daring to miss a single word. The contents made her feel as if the world was ending. According to the description, if her guesses were correct, the natural disasters of her previous life were simply nature's survival of the fittest, like the vanished dinosaurs. Perhaps many years from now, some intelligent beings would discover their bones and be equally shocked and awed. She fixed her gaze on the last line of text. Those who voluntarily sign the Ember Plan. If you live, you receive resources. If you die, you will disappear forever. Sign or not? Perhaps Jiang Mian hesitated too long. At that moment the system popped up a final warning. If you voluntarily give up, then you will never be able to form a contract with the system. Look, this system is even using reverse psychology. Jiang Mian waved her hand. Sign must sign. She, Jiang Mian, was never one to shrink back. If she truly gave up the Fire Seed Plan, then when others in the world quietly evolved later, wouldn't the guns and ammo in her hands be just for show? Moreover, she had infinite space. If she didn't stockpile more supplies, wouldn't that be a waste? Thinking this, she chose to sign the contract. The next moment, her vision went black. When she woke again, she found herself lying on a large bed. A notification tone sounded in her mind. Welcome to the Doomsday Survival game. You have all voluntarily signed the Kindling program. From today on, do not disclose the Kindling program to outsiders. Violators will bear the consequences. After 30 days, the system will enable teleportation. Dear survivors, please try your best to stay alive. Jiang Mian extracted the important information from the 2 messages. 1. Don't disclose the Spark Plan. 2. You have to survive 30 days to return. What about those who die? Do they disappear forever? If you can't figure it out, then don't think about it. At that moment, a wheel suddenly appeared before Jiang Mian. On the wheel was written, Newcomer Benefit. Talent will click to draw and receive an initial talent. Friend, want to draw? At this point you should pray to your fate. You might pull an incredibly powerful talent, or you might get something utterly garbage, and you might even get a talent that weakens you instead. Jiang Mian. She silently looked away, planning to confirm her surroundings before drawing. She examined the area around her, feeling like she was in a hotel room. The room was unusually tidy. Besides a large bed there was a wardrobe, which held no clothes, and a single suitcase. Jiang Mian crouched down and checked the contents of the suitcase. 2 ID cards, one hers, and one belonging to another unfamiliar man. Chapter 11 Cruise Crisis 1. Fu Yunan? Jiang Mian spat out the name. Is she a native of this world? Or like her also a survivor? The suitcase contained only a few intimate pieces of clothing for 2 people, looking extremely sexy, like the kind of bikinis one would wear on a beach vacation. Jiang Mian silently set the suitcase aside. She climbed to the window and looked out, and to her surprise saw the boundless sea. Have to survive at sea for 30 days? What kind of disaster would happen then? Tsunami? Tornado? Pirates raiding? Shake head, forget it, better not overthink it. Whatever disaster comes, soldiers will block soldiers and earth will cover water. She didn't believe that with such a large space and so many supplies inside, she could starve to death at sea. She checked the door, made sure it was deadbolt, and only then began to spin the lottery wheel. At the same time, she closed her eyes and put her hands together in prayer, but what she said was outrageously arrogant. I died and came back to life, and I even joined the Flame Project, which proves I'm favored by heaven. I'm bound to draw something good. If I don't get something good, I'll just blow up this ship and make everyone else die to accompany my bad luck. Originally the wheel had stopped on a talent called Never Get Choked When Drinking Water, but whether it was because it heard Jiang Mian's prayer or for some other reason, it quietly moved forward one more space. Ding. Congratulations to the survivor for obtaining the initial talent. Copy-paste. Copy-paste allows you to copy someone else's genetic ability onto yourself. Jiang Mian stared at this talent, completely stunned. Genetic ability, what is that? He thought for a moment, released a hornet from his space, then activated his talent. Successfully copied gene ability, flight. Note: each time the gene ability of the same species is copied, a different effect will be obtained. Due to the survivor's constitution, only 3 gene abilities can be pasted at present. Seeing that he had successfully copied it, and it was the especially useful ability to fly, Jiang Mian immediately pasted it onto herself. In an instant, she felt a chill all over, and the next second she was suddenly lifted into the air. However, as soon as her feet were about 5 centimeters off the ground, she came to her senses and immediately gave up flying. In this unfamiliar place, she didn't know whether there were any cameras, and if someone saw her, she would have no small amount of trouble. After holding back the excitement in her chest, Jiang Mian opened the door and walked out. Looking at the ship tour map posted at the entrance, Jiang Mian took a photo of it with her phone, then followed the route to get familiar with the surroundings. She first went to the 3rd-floor dining hall, where she found some people gobbling down food. They looked as if they hadn't eaten in a long time. They were dressed neatly, but just by looking at their faces one could tell they were sallow and emaciated, completely mismatched with the clothes they wore. Just then a middle-aged man in a suit said, "Waiter, bring me 10 more servings of fried noodles. I'll pack them to go." The waiter walked up to the man with a smile and said gently, "Sir, our restaurant doesn't allow meals to be packed for takeaway. Please understand." The waiter thought he had done nothing wrong, but the middle-aged man suddenly stood up and slapped him. Smack. "What do you mean you don't allow takeout? What? Are you afraid I can't pay? Let me tell you, I have plenty of money." The waiter covered his face, tears welling in his eyes. Looking around at people watching the show, no one was willing to stand up for him. He could only explain in a low voice, "Sorry sir, I might have to ask our boss about this. Please wait a moment." After speaking, the waiter left with his face covered. Jiang Mian noticed, however, that a thin black line had flashed in the waiter's eyes just now. She suspected it might be her imagination, but she didn't believe she would have hallucinations for no reason, especially since she had arrived in an unfamiliar world where anything could happen. Even if it was only a trick of the eye, she needed to be extra cautious. Before long, the waiter brought out 10 neatly packed meals in lunchboxes and handed them to the middle-aged man. The others, seeing this, hurriedly called the waitstaff and asked to have their food packed to go. The server smiled and nodded in agreement. At that moment, the server looked at the unmoved Jiang Mian and kindly asked, "Miss, would you like your food packed to go as well?" Jiang Mian smiled and shook her head. "No. Thank you for your kindness. I still prefer eating fresh ingredients." After speaking, she seemed to notice the server's swollen face for the first time and said sympathetically, "Your face must hurt a lot, right? I suggest you apply icy. It's very good for reducing swelling." The waiter was surprised. After being beaten by a customer and insulted by his supervisor, he could not believe someone still cared about him. Overcome with emotion, a flicker of a dark line swam across his eyes. "Thank you, ma'am. After I'm done with my work, I'll put some ice on my face." Jiang Mian nodded and watched the waiter leave with a smiling gaze. Confirmed the waiter really did have a problem. And the dark line she had just seen was not an illusion. Could it be related to this survival game? She had originally come to the kitchen to get some food, but after seeing the attendant acting strangely, she no longer dared to use anything on the ship. Next she went out onto the deck, looking at the surging seawater. She had the idea of storing some of it in her space. After purification and filtration, seawater can also be drunk. With so much seawater, secretly collecting some into her space should be fine, right? Thinking this, Jiang Mian slowly crouched down. Just then, someone suddenly shouted, "Ma'am, please don't get too close to the water. The surging sea could sweep you away at any moment." Jiang Mian silently stood up, looking at the water with some regret. With so many people around, she couldn't do anything she wanted. She turned and smiled at the person who had stopped her. He was wearing a uniform with patrol team on the sleeve, probably a security officer from the ship. Jiang Mian said, a little embarrassed, "I'm really sorry for troubling you. I just felt a strange kinship with the sea and wanted to touch it a little." The patrol members saw Jiang Mian was a young woman and so pretty, and their attitude immediately softened. "It's all right, it's all right. When the ship is sailing, the sea isn't always calm. It's easy for someone to be swept overboard, which is why we remind passengers not to get too close to the rail. Thank you all, you really are diligent and responsible." Jiang Mian chatted with them a few more minutes before leaving. As for collecting seawater, that would have to wait. There would be opportunities aboard the ship anyway. Chapter 12, Cruise Ship Crisis 2. He'd almost finished looking through the downstairs area. The ship looked calm and undisturbed, and apart from the waiter's odd deadpan look, Jiang Mian didn't notice anything else out of the ordinary. Maybe because it was mealtime, there weren't many people in the entertainment venues on the second floor. Jiang Mian was about to leave when he heard a pained cry. "Stop hitting us, big brother. We know we were wrong. We shouldn't have robbed you. Please let us go." Jiang Mian looked over and saw that in an unassuming corner, about 4 or 5 people were being beaten by a man. Jiang Mian sighed, "This is way too chaotic. Pulling people who survived different apocalypses together into a survival game will naturally lead to more conflicts. This was inevitable. After all, there weren't that many people living through the apocalypse. Few could eat their fill every day. Most were ordinary people struggling to survive, and the pent-up frustration in their hearts would naturally need an outlet. Take that innocent waiter, for example. He was a typical case. Jiang Mian was just about to leave when he saw one of the men who had been pleading suddenly produce a dagger out of thin air. However, his sneak attack did not succeed. The man actually threw a ball of flame directly onto the man holding the dagger, who was preparing to strike. The man immediately screamed, rolling on the ground as he tried to extinguish the flames on his arms. But the flames seemed to have some kind of accelerant. No matter how he flailed, he couldn't put them out. Finally, the man could only harden his heart and have his companion cut off his arm. Seeing such a bloody scene, Jiang Mian feared being caught up in it and turned to leave, but at that moment he heard a terrified female voice. What are you doing? You're bullying the weak. Do you believe I'll call the police? Idiot. Jiang Mian cursed inwardly. Leaving now wasn't right, and staying wasn't either. She turned to look at the girl who was screaming, a young woman who looked to be in her 20s, her eyes full of the innocence and bewilderment of someone newly out in the world. So when she saw the scene, she let out a shriek, trying to make them stop. But this really put Jiang Mian in a bind. Enku, like Jiang Mian, had also joined the Firebrand project. This was her first mission. She had only intended to familiarize herself with the ship's layout, but instead she saw this on the second floor. Enku, who had never experienced anything like this since childhood, was so frightened by the brutal sight of the man's severed arm that she screamed. Seeing the man who could seemingly conjure fire walking toward her, Enku shouted and shoved Jiang Mian forward, then turned and ran. Jiang Mian could have dodged, but at that moment she was thinking about something else. Isn't this the man whose ID was kept with hers, that man named Han? Mainly, the man's name was hard to remember. She hadn't clearly remembered what he was called. Because of that, after being pushed by Enku, she didn't react in time and suddenly fell to the ground. Seeing the man come over holding a knife, Jiang Mian forced herself to take a step back, then suddenly looked at him pitifully. She stretched out both hands, making a begging to be gesture, and said in a pitiable voice, "Han, it hurts so much, I think I twisted my foot." Fu Yunhan was stunned, not understanding what plot twist this was. Did he know this woman? Why did she demand he hold her as soon as she approached? When he arrived in this world, it happened to be while he was working out in the gym on the second floor. Before he could figure out what place this was, enemies from his previous life had found him and surrounded him. So regarding the identities of the two, Fu Yunhan was actually very confused. Seeing that the man remained unmoved, Jiang Mian simply administered a stronger tactic. "Husband, what's wrong with you? You used to feel so sorry for me when you saw me like this. You would take me to see a doctor without a second thought. Why did you change ever since you boarded the ship? Why have you started to ignore me? I'm being bullied and you're indifferent." Hearing Jiang Mian's words, Fu Yunhan stumbled and almost fell. Seeing that the woman was about to cry, he had no choice but to pick Jiang Mian up and put her on a nearby chair. It wasn't that he wanted to play along with her. It was because the voice in his head reminded him to mind his character, avoid OOC, and not be suspected by the original world's residents. The moment Jiang Mian encountered this man, she activated her talent. Successfully copied gene ability. Strong and powerful body. Jiang Mian frowned. Although a strong and powerful body was a very good gene ability, after witnessing the man produce an inextinguishable flame out of thin air, what she wanted more now was the man's fire. So she did not choose to paste this body-strengthening gene. She wasn't willing to give up. She planned to, later when the two of them made contact, copy again. Watching the man efficiently deal with the few people in the corner, Jiang Mian was so envious she was drooling. Extremely high physical fitness, a crisp fighting style, and the ease and naturalness with which he wielded a knife, as if combat instincts were etched into his genes, plus the occasional bursts of flame, all of that made her jealous. After Fu Junhan took care of those men, he came over to Jiang Mian's side and looked at her in surprise. He discovered that this woman was not afraid of him at all. Jiang Mian looked at the man, realizing that it was her behavior that had made him a bit suspicious. She was relying on the fact that she had learned the information in advance, and that was why she began to set a trap for him. "What's wrong, husband? Why are you looking at me like that?" Fu Yunhan scrutinized her suspiciously and asked, "I just killed someone. Aren't you afraid of me?" Jiang Mian gave a bitter smile. "Honey, why are you asking this kind of question again? Are you still testing my sincerity? I was willing to give up my prominent family for you. Give up marrying my rich and wealthy fiancé, resolutely abandon everything and choose to run to you. How can you still doubt my sincerity? This melodramatic? How could an apocalyptic game assign itself such an identity?" He really wasn't good at handling emotional issues. And after racking his brains, he managed to come up with a few comforting words. "I'm not thinking that. Don't overthink it." Jiang Mian cursed silently, "Scumbag." She lifted her head and offered a smile. Though the corners of her eyes were still wet with tears, she nevertheless said in a conciliatory tone, "I believe you. Husband, Can you hold me now and take me back to our room? I'm a little tired. Seeing her forced smile like that, Fu Yunhan wanted to say more to comfort her, but worried that saying too much might make things worse. He could only hold her, follow her lead, and go to the room where they lived. Jiang Mian took out the room card and handed it to Fu Yunhan. After Fu Yunhan opened the door, he finally placed Jiang Mian on the bed. Chapter 13 Cruise Crisis 3. Jiang Mian felt somewhat down. Because her copy and paste skill was still at level 1, she could only copy other people's genetic abilities 3 times a day. And she had used the last chance on the Manonli to copy something that was very useful for a man, but utterly useless for a woman. Each use must last at least 30 minutes. Ha! That's hilarious. Teacher, may I ask, my Zihan doesn't have that thing. How is she supposed to use this skill? If it weren't for her current limited physical condition, she really would have liked to try to see whether this skill could make her grow boobs. This was her dream. Because of this, all the way until they reached the hotel room, Jiang Mian didn't bother Fu Yunhan anymore. She was truly exhausted, and since being reborn she hadn't had a proper sleep. Without realizing it, she had fallen asleep on the bed. When Fu Yunhan saw the woman on the bed asleep, he also breathed a sigh of relief. He really didn't know how to interact with the opposite sex. If forced to choose between killing 100 zombies and coaxing a woman, he would definitely choose to kill the zombies. He was a straight man, never one to flatter, especially not women. Fu Yunhan began collecting items related to the 2 people's identities in the room. Similarly, he found their ID cards in the suitcase, as well as the underwear inside the case. This was enough to show that their relationship was not simple. Perhaps they really were star-crossed lovers who had run away together for love. Thinking of this, Fu Yunhan felt a headache coming on. He didn't much want to protect a woman who couldn't lift a finger. He hoped that when things on the ship went chaotic, this woman would already be dead, so he wouldn't have to bother. Although this woman called Jiang Mian was very beautiful, in his heart there was only the resolute belief in wanting to survive. Jiang Mian was the same. Sometimes when she acted weak, it didn't mean she was truly that frail. Instead, she chose to appear weak temporarily to gain greater advantage. After all, if merely using one's looks to put on an act can yield unexpected gains, why not use it? There's nothing shameful about that. So the 2 of them tacitly and peacefully coexisted with one another. However, the other players on the ship didn't think so. This time the people placed on this vessel numbered a full 10,000 sparks from various apocalypse worlds. On the very first day alone, 100 died. Most of them had previously done missions in the same world, and had grudges against each other. Meeting again now, they naturally started fighting without a second thought. There were the cautious ones, and of course those who didn't care. The latter were quickly noticed by the ship's patrol for acting suspiciously. They were very alert about this matter. After all, the residents of this cruise were not just ordinary wealthy people. Higher up were those big shots. If anything happened to those big shots, there wouldn't be enough people on their whole ship to bury them. Knock, knock, knock. Jiang Mian was awakened by the knocking outside. She sat up and went to the door, where she saw people in patrol uniforms holding a notebook and jotting something down. After seeing that Jiang Mian was a girl, they asked her some personal questions, and whether she'd noticed anyone acting strangely lately. Jiang Mian cooperated fully with the registration, and incidentally wrote down Fu Yunhan's name as well. Seeing her cooperative attitude, the patrol team members warned, there may have been a group of fleeing criminals who boarded the ship recently. If you encounter anyone who doesn't value human life, get away immediately. If possible, try to give us their location. Okay, I understand. Thank you. No need to thank us. By the way, where's your boyfriend? Isn't he here? Jiang Mian didn't know what they meant by that question. A sense of caution rose in her chest, but she kept her expression unchanged and said, he went to the 3rd floor to get me something to eat earlier. He should be back soon. As she spoke, she suddenly waved behind the few of them. Honey, over here. The patrol members exchanged glances when they saw this, then left and moved on to register at the next room. Jiang Mian watched their departing figures, her gaze lingering on the weapons at their waists. She didn't know what this group's intentions were, but the sudden sense of danger a moment ago made her feel like she had needles on her back. It seemed that not only could the ship's staff not be trusted, even the patrol team that appeared to be maintaining order was not simple. Players, patrol team, staff, ordinary tourists of the 4 parties known so far. Jiang Mian temporarily classified herself as an ordinary tourist. She wouldn't choose to take risks before obtaining Fu Yunhan's fire ability. By the way, that girl who pushed me yesterday, I don't know whether she was an ordinary tourist or a player. But no matter whether she was an ordinary tourist or a player, since she wanted me to die for her, she no longer had any need to live. Jiang Mian had never been a good person. After Fu Yunhan finished inspecting the cruise ship, he saw Jiang Mian at the door talking with the patrol team. After a short while she shouted over to him, so he walked over accordingly. This time Jiang Mian didn't make a move on him. She'd already used up her ability's daily quota, so she naturally didn't need to touch the man anymore. If she upset him, she wouldn't be able to beat him. Fu Yunhan sighed with relief. Jiang Mian was like a piece of chewing gum stuck to him, and impossible to shake off. Just then, Jiang Mian suddenly asked Fu Yunhan, "Are you hungry? Let's go eat." Her question was a probe, meant to see whether Fu Yunhan had noticed that something was wrong in the dining hall. "No thank you. I've already eaten. If you want something to eat, I can go with you." When Fu Yunhan investigated today, he also noticed that the waiter had been acting oddly in his emotional agitation. He suspected this crisis might be related to the waiter's strange behavior, so he was naturally unwilling to touch any food in the restaurant, and didn't even want to drink the water. Hearing Fu Yunhan, Jiang Mian could tell as well he had also noticed something off. He refused the offer to accompany him to the restaurant. "Never mind, it's too late now. I won't eat, consider it dieting." Fu Yunhan neither agreed nor disagreed with Jiang Mian. But where would the two sleep tonight? That became a problem. Logically, Jiang Mian calling Fu Yunhan husband meant they were already married, so them sharing a room shouldn't be an issue, but the two of them were clearly from different worlds now, and sleeping together felt awkward. Jiang Mian hadn't decided on an excuse to get rid of Fu Yunhan when she saw him lying on the sofa holding a quilt. Chapter 14 Cruise Crisis 4. Fu Yunhan's explanation was, "After all, we aren't really married yet, and I haven't proposed to you, so it's better not to sleep on the same bed. I'm afraid I might not be able to control myself." Jiang Mian naturally snorted at his clumsy explanation, but since he had offered a solution, there was no need for her to expose him. However, she still said, "Actually, I don't mind that at all." However, Fu Yunhan did not respond to Jiang Mian's words. It was as if he had already fallen asleep. Seeing this, Jiang Mian shrugged and simply treated him as if he really had fallen asleep. She closed her eyes and took care of the farm animals, scooping out their droppings and feeding them. "Looks like I'll need to stock up more on grains and fodder, otherwise chickens and ducks won't have enough to eat." Over the past few days, her chicken, duck and goose pens had produced many chicken eggs, duck eggs, goose eggs and turkey eggs. Strangely, these eggs could all be sold for money, and even the cow's milk could be sold, whereas in the real world those eggs couldn't be sold. After several hours of busy work, she finally solved the livestock problem, and then left the consciousness space. Looking at the time on her phone, it was already 12:30 at night, and the skills had begun to refresh. Jiang Mian wouldn't give up. She stealthily reached out to touch Fu Yunhan again. However, as soon as she got close to Fu Yunhan, the man opened his eyes, grabbed her wrist, and looked at her coldly. Jiang Mian was startled by the look in his eyes. She saw unhidden murderous intent there. Did this man want to kill her? Almost instinctively, she wanted to pull a gun out of the space, but in the next second she forcefully suppressed her subconscious. She suddenly hugged Fu Yunhan, and began to complain with puckered lips, "Oh husband, what are you doing? It hurts." Fu Yunhan came to his senses at her calling him husband, realizing that it wasn't an enemy trying to kill him, but the fiancé of this identity. Only then did he release his grip, looking at Jiang Mian coldly. "What were you just trying to do? Why did you appear beside me?" Jiang Mian turned away angrily, putting on an air of being upset. "Look who's talking. I was just going to the bathroom and noticed you hadn't pulled the covers up, so I was only trying to tuck you in. Was it necessary for you to be so rough? You pinched my wrist until it was red. You nearly broke it. I'm never talking to you again." With that, Jiang Mian pushed the door open and left. Fu Yunhan instinctively wanted to go after her, but then slapped his forehead when he realized what he'd done. I was really stupid. She's only the original owner's fiancé. What does that have to do with me? If she died out there because of her own reckless behavior, wouldn't that be just fine? Having thought this through, Fu Yunhan lay back down and went on sleeping. Jiang Mian waited outside for a while, and after confirming Fu Yunhan hadn't come out in pursuit, she went on toward her destination. As for the gene ability copied from the recent contact with Fu Yunhan, forget it, better not say anything. It's still not as good as the one I copied yesterday, always at least 30 minutes. Jiang Mian stepped out into the corridor and found the lights still blazing outside, although it was already past midnight. He had to admit that the luxury of this cruise ship was enough to make one lose track of day and night. At that moment, she came to the deck at the back of the ship, the place she had discovered today where she could touch the seawater. Seeing that no one was around, Jiang Mian was about to put her hand into the sea, when the cube alerted her. Life form detected. Cannot be placed into stasis space. Jiang Mian was taken aback. She quickly withdrew her hand. She was certain she had only touched seawater, there was no living creature, so why did the cube warn her that it was something alive? She looked at her hand. With the naked eye there was no visible difference. Apart from some lingering droplets, there was nothing. Her eyes shifted, and she put her hand into the seawater again, collected some seawater and put it into the breeding area. The seawater was successfully taken in, and a separate fenced pen was opened. The description of the fenced pen also changed a bit. Brain-eating worm larva. Who would raise something like this? Do they want their brains eaten by brainworms? Reading the fence house description of the thing, Jiang Mian was taken aback. She quickly disinfected her hands, and to be safe she went to a bathroom, changed all her clothes, then used water from her space to clean her body thoroughly. Only after confirming she wasn't carrying any brainworms did she relax. This so-called brainworm, just the name sounds bad. It probably eats people's brains, and even if it doesn't, it's hardly any better. In any case, it's not something good. Jiang Mian didn't want to get tangled up with this thing. Because of today's incident, she completely gave up the idea of collecting seawater, and decided from now on she would never use the ship's water again. She didn't use even the slightest bit of it anymore. Not even the toilet. The space was full of plastic bags. She'd just handle it on those and then throw them into the sea. As for caring for the environment, give me a break. If you're about to lose your life, who cares about protecting the environment? Besides, she was producing and disposing of everything herself. How much trash could she generate in a month? Once he came to terms with that, Jiang Mian finally relaxed. He still didn't know whether these brain-eating worms would die after being cooked at high temperatures. If they were strong enough to resist heat, that would be really bad. At the other side of the ship, Jiang Mian found a group of people gathered there. She went over and saw that they were the ship's crew hauling sea creatures out of the water. Thinking of the brain-eating worms in the sea and watching the crew pull up seafood, a worrying guess suddenly occurred to her. Could these marine creatures, grown in waters infested with brain-eating worms, also be carrying the worms on their bodies? With that idea, Jiang Mian asked a staff member for a small fish. The staff had planned to release that fish because it was too small, and when a passenger asked for it, they simply handed it over to Jiang Mian. Jiang Mian naturally didn't dare take it with her hands. She took out a plastic bag and had the staff put the fish into it before she left. Other tourists saw her do this, and a few of them, unable to resist their curiosity, also chose to ask for the small fish they liked. Jiang Mian went to the restroom again and put the fish away. Of course, she didn't add this fish to her previous pond. She chose to create a separate pond just for it. Open the fish pond description. Parasitized cod. Head removable and edible. It can actually be eaten? This was something Jiang Mian hadn't expected. But she didn't want to eat it, found it a bit off-putting. Her space was full of food. She hadn't reached the point of utter desperation. Jiang Mian had just come out of the bathroom when someone stopped her. The person blocking her way was one of the crew members who had just been catching fish. Chapter 15 Cruise Crisis 5. She still remembered Jiang Mian quite well. Seeing Jiang Mian empty-handed, The woman asked curiously, "Hey, weren't you the first girl to ask for fish just now? Where's your fish? Why haven't you brought it out?" Song Qianqian did it on purpose, even raising her voice a bit. She was just irritated that this woman was stealing the spotlight, so she wanted to embarrass her on purpose. Unfortunately, Jiang Mian didn't know her motives and thought the woman was just curious. To avoid drawing attention, she explained politely, "Oh, that fish? I felt sorry for it in the bag, so I released it." Released it? The woman, as if hearing some earth-shattering gossip, immediately raised her voice and shouted. Jiang Mian's eardrums ached from the sound. Now she understood that the woman's reason for stopping her wasn't so innocent. She immediately grew suspicious. Could it be that I exposed my identity? But I didn't do anything special back then. Even taking the plastic bag was pretended, as if I pulled it out of my pocket. It shouldn't be so obvious to anyone, right? Seeing the jealousy in the woman's eyes and her occasional glances to the side, Jiang Mian followed her line of sight, and saw 3 men and 2 women standing nearby watching them. Of the 3 men, their looks were how to put it? They were passable. The other 2 women were actually quite pretty. The one who blocked her was also not bad-looking. I don't know what she was thinking. Immediately, Jiang Mian lost interest. She looked at the woman and asked, "Yes, I released the fish. Is there anything else you need? If not, please move aside, I'm going home." She had her own things to do and couldn't be bothered with this woman. However, hearing Jiang Mian's words only made the woman more proud. She raised her head and looked at Jiang Mian with displeasure. "Why did you release such a small fish? Don't you know you're harming it this way? It will be eaten by bigger fish. How can you be so cruel?" Jiang Mian looked at the woman with a "you're ridiculous" expression. Is she insane, suddenly coming up to her and acting crazy? She no longer had a good temper either, and simply shoved the woman away. The woman hadn't expected Jiang Mian to be so strong and was pushed aside. Seeing she couldn't catch up with Jiang Mian, she suddenly shouted, "You heartless creature! Harming living beings, God won't bless you." Hearing that, Jiang Mian spun his head sharply and looked at the woman coldly. "God certainly won't bless you either, heretic who casually curses others." What Jiang Mian thought to himself was, "I don't believe in God anyway." She is now an atheist. After all, such a huge catastrophe happened in her last life. And there were no gods or spirits to save them, weren't people just left to fend for themselves. After Jiang Mian left, the 3 men and 2 women nearby came over and asked, "How is Qianqian? Did you find anything out?" Song Qianqian's expression stiffened. She had been so busy arguing just now that she had actually forgotten her own purpose. Her face looked rather unpleasant. A few of them had known each other in the previous world. In that world, the 6 of them had struggled to survive in a zombie-infested landscape. They never expected to reunite in this world and successfully form a team. They were out tonight to scout the situation, and happened upon Jiang Mian's sudden turn of events. They instinctively assumed Jiang Mian was also a player, and wanted to see if she had found any clues. If possible, cooperation between the parties wouldn't be out of the question. Coincidentally, Song Qianqian volunteered to take the lead, so they let her step forward to negotiate. "Qianqian, say something. Why aren't you talking?" Seeing Song Qianqian silent, one of the short-haired women grew anxious and hurriedly shook her shoulder. Song Qianqian rolled her eyes and yanked the woman's hand away. She said impatiently, "Could you not be so violent? Don't you know you have a lot of strength?" The short-haired girl scratched her head and looked at her apologetically. Sorry Qianqian, I forgot again." Song Qianqian ignored her. She turned to look at the lead boy, the most conventionally handsome of the 3, and her tone immediately dropped a few registers. "Brother Zhou, that first girl who wanted the fish is just a native who likes showing off. She only wanted to attract attention. After getting the fish, she released it. She didn't notice anything wrong." Hearing Song Qianqian's explanation, the man called Brother Zhou nodded, and immediately lost interest in Jiang Mian. He then went off with the others to look for clues. Jiang Mian didn't know what had happened in between. After she left, she followed the fisherman to a secluded little door. She looked at the words written on the door, and secretly memorized the location. So the warehouse is here. The map didn't mark the warehouse's position. After Jiang Mian quietly committed the spot to memory, She planned to visit when she had time. She then went through the upper floors she hadn't toured yet, one by one. I roughly understood the layout of the ship. The first floor, that is the deck, is for enjoying the sea view. The second floor is for entertainment, with all kinds of amusement facilities. The third floor is for dining, with various different restaurants. The fourth floor is for luxury shops. The 5th through 10th floors are hotels, and the 11th floor is a hall, apparently used for dancing and socializing. The 12th floor should be for important people. Because Jiang Mian didn't have a room card, he was denied access. Seeing Jiang Mian about to continue up the stairs, a staff member reminded her, "Miss, without a special invitation you are not allowed on floors 12 through 15. The regular sightseeing area is limited to below the 10th floor. The 11th floor is only open at specific times." "Thank you." Jiang Mian nodded in understanding and didn't make things difficult for the staff. The staff member heaved a sigh of relief. Lately, for some reason, many people had been trying to get up to the 12th floor to see the view. When they were stopped they kept shouting at the staff. Privately, they were all wondering why this group of rich people had such poor manners. After Jiang Mian left, many others planned to go up to the 12th floor like her, but they were stopped again. However, this group of tourists weren't as easy to persuade as Jiang Mian had been. They immediately started causing a scene. As a result, a team of patrol officers in special uniforms came out and quickly subdued several people. A few of them tried to resist, but their thighs were instantly pierced by pistols fitted with suppressors. They were then dragged back like dead dogs. Hiding in a corner, Jiang Mian covered her mouth, staring at the scene in shock. Watching these people act so decisively, her gaze toward the 12th floor turned suspicious. To be able to brandish handguns so openly to stop unruly tourists. It seems the floors above the 12th aren't simple at all. At the same time she couldn't help feeling a bit relieved, luckily. When she just saw the staff making that reaching back gesture, she became more alert and chose to leave. If I had been more confrontational, I'd probably be like those who were taken away now. Chapter 16 Cruise Ship Crisis 6. Jiang Mian returned to her room still shaken, and saw Fu Yunhan opening his eyes after she had opened the door, playing the whole act. She snorted and turned over to pull the covers over her head and sleep. Fu Yunhan looked at Jiang Mian, who had come back unscathed, with a hint of regret, thinking, how is she so lucky on a ship full of dangers? She somehow returned completely unharmed? Jiang Mian had no idea what he was thinking. Right now her mind was full of the secret of the 12th floor, and she had no mood to play the pampered fiancé. Besides, the two of them had just had a fight, so they'd have a cold war for a few days. Early in the morning, Jiang Mian was woken up by the noise Fu Yunhan made. She opened her eyes and said irritably, "What are you doing again?" Fu Yunhan was innocently blamed, had only gotten up to wash normally, and hadn't done anything. Jiang Mian just said that, and then went back to sleep. She thought it was only the second day. There shouldn't be any great danger on the cruise, so it was best to conserve her energy. After Fu Yunhan finished tidying up and walked out, she finally got up, felt the faucet, and found not a trace of water flow. It seemed that this big shot Fu Yunhan had also noticed something was wrong. Jiang Mian took out a bottle of purified water to rinse her mouth, then pulled a bag of steamed buns from her space. The buns were still warm when she took them out. Her grandmother had steamed them specially for her. They weren't sold anywhere else. Contentedly finishing breakfast, she went to the bathroom to brush her teeth and clear the taste from her mouth. Of course, using the purified water as well. The water in the room came from the seabed. The big shots didn't use it, and she certainly dared not. After finishing her meal, she began wandering around the first floor, glancing at the storage room from time to time. Unfortunately, places like the storage room were always guarded, so she couldn't sneak in at all. Just as she was feeling a bit disappointed, she turned around and suddenly bumped into someone. Jiang Mian felt her forehead go dizzy from the collision. After steadying herself, she finally saw who was standing behind her. Jiang Mian frowned, looking at the man in front of her. The man had slightly wavy hair, phoenix-shaped eyes and cool, thin red lips that curved into a smile. To be honest, Jiang Mian's first impression of him was that he was not someone to be trifled with. Jiang Mian naturally followed her first impression. She looked at the man with a hint of apology. I'm really sorry. Sir. I didn't mean to hit you just now. It's my fault for not paying attention to what was behind me, which led to this rude incident. Jiang Mian thought her words were airtight. Most people would let the matter drop. But the man before her did not choose to do that. He clutched his chest, frowning in discomfort. Ah. My chest hurts so much, could my rib be broken? Jiang Mian. Please, can you at least pretend it's your ribs that hurt? Why are you holding your stomach? Not knowing what this man was up to, Jiang Mian didn't do anything out of line. She still spoke kindly. How about I take you to the infirmary? Really? Thank you so much. With his objective achieved, the man stopped pretending and let Jiang Mian support him as they went to the infirmary. The infirmary was on basement level 1. They arrived quickly. The doctor examined the man, said nothing serious, and hung a bottle of glucose for him. Jiang Mian looked at him and said, I'll pay your medical bill this time. The doctor has already checked you. There's no fracture and no internal injury. Can I go now? The moment she said she was leaving, the man immediately grabbed her wrist. Miss Jiang, I was watching you last night. You seemed very concerned about the things in the warehouse. You must be a survivor too, right? Jiang Mian's back stiffened. She really wanted to pretend not to understand, but unfortunately she fell into the trap of inexperience. Sorry, sir, I don't understand what you're talking about. Helling smiled and mercilessly exposed her. Oh, it seems you're still a rookie. No wonder you didn't know if she were a native. She simply wouldn't have heard that line. Got played. Once Jiang Mian reacted, she clenched her fist, instantly pulling a dagger out from her space and pressing it against the man's neck. Helling looked at Jiang Mian as if she were a child. Instead of stepping back, she even leaned forward a little. The dagger cut the man's neck, yet in the next second his neck had returned to its original state. Helling raised an eyebrow and, looking at Jiang Mian whose pupils had constricted, said, You can't kill me. With your strength, trying to kill me might just wear you out first. Jiang Mian had always been practical. Knowing she truly couldn't kill the man before her, she immediately withdrew the dagger, pulled back her wrist, and folded her arms across her chest. Looking at the man with a blank expression, she said, Oh? Then tell me, after all this trouble to lure me here, what do you want? To silence me? Or to cooperate with me? Ha ha ha. He Ling applauded. I like clever people. No wonder you're the woman who made Fu Yunhan run around in circles. Truly clever. How about a deal? In this round of the game, you obstruct Fu Yunhan at every turn. And I guarantee you'll survive until the last day of the game. Jiang Mian was somewhat surprised. This man wasn't asking her to kill Fu Yunhan, but to trip him up? Seeing that he seemed to know what she was thinking, the man sneered. You can't kill him. Even though I possess immortality, I can't guarantee I could kill him. If you really could kill Fu Yunhan, I'd kneel and call you father. Hearing that, Jiang Mian felt a stir in her heart. Of course, it wasn't the excitement of about to gain such a big son from the man, but the man's ability, immortality. Just hearing it sounded extraordinary. Judging by how fast he had just recovered, it made her envious. So Jiang Mian asked, Are you sure that by only tripping him up, you can guarantee I'll be the last one alive? Of course. Then I should at least know your name. I can't exactly come to you if something happens and I don't know who you are, can I? The man thought for a moment, found her reasoning sensible, and said He Ling. Jiang Mian nodded, about to introduce herself, but was interrupted by He Ling. I know your name, Miss Jiang Mian. Jiang Mian was very displeased, feeling as if she had been looked down upon. She gritted her teeth and secretly plotted that once she became stronger, she would make this man kneel and beg her. He Ling, of course, knew Jiang Mian would be upset, but to him she was nothing more than an ant, not even worth his notice. She was willing to cooperate with her only because of her status, which could be used to mess with Fu Yunhan. What kind of expression would Fu Yunhan have when he found out that the fiancé he'd always thought was a native resident was actually also a player? Just thinking about that scene made He Ling extremely excited. Chapter 17. Cruise Crisis 7. Jiang Mian reached out his hand. All right then. Here's to a pleasant cooperation, Mr. Helling? Helling shrugged, not minding shaking Jiang Mian's hand. Pleasant cooperation. Successfully copied gene ability. Healing power. The smile at the corner of Jiang Mian's mouth grew wider. Here's to a pleasant cooperation. Right now Jiang Mian looks at He Ling, and finds him pleasing no matter how he looks at him. Even his cutting words seem so kind. After searching high and low with no luck, suddenly getting it without any effort that describes Jiang Mian. He had been troubled because he couldn't replicate Fu Yunhan's flames, but unexpectedly he had now gained He Ling's healing ability. Now all that's left is Fu Yunhan's flames. It seemed Fu Yunhan was just as she had guessed, truly a big shot, and that the unkillable He Ling was also a big shot. The two held a grudge against each other, so if she played her cards right, she might even gain some benefits from it. With that thought, Jiang Mian's steps became even lighter. With the supernatural powers provided by those big shots, wouldn't she be about to take off? However, reality quickly slapped her in the face. Staring at the slowly healing wound on his hand, Jiang Mian was stunned. That's not right. Why am I recovering so slowly? That guy called He Ling can recover instantly? Could it be because this was copied, so it's been weakened a lot? Or is this just the limit of my ability? Unable to figure it out, Jiang Mian stopped trying. Seeing Fu Yunhan unusually resting inside the room, Jiang Mian was momentarily taken aback. Shouldn't this guy be out looking for clues? How can he be so carefree? Still lying at home resting? Fu Yunhan was being stared at by Jiang Mian. At first he didn't care, but anyone would feel uncomfortable after being stared at for half an hour. He looked at Jiang Mian and said, "Why have you been staring at me? If you have something to say, just say it. I'm not going to do anything to you." Jiang Mian hesitantly told him about today's events. Of course, she omitted that she had been exposed as a survivor. So when Fu Yunhan heard the name He Ling, and then heard that He Ling wanted to use Jiang Mian to cause trouble for him, he immediately burst into angry laughter. This guy He Ling is someone he encountered in one of his earlier missions. At the time the two were in different factions, so they naturally became adversaries. After resolving all the opposing teams, only the two of them remained. In their fight, because He Ling's ability wasn't an offensive type, he suffered quite a bit, and came to hold a grudge against Fu Yunhan. Whenever the two met in an instance, He Ling would scheme against him in every way, but never once succeeded. Whether by hijacking others to gank him alone, or by plotting against him, it always ended in failure. Now He Ling's even set his sights on NPCs. He's really going backwards as he lives on. Jiang Mian, afraid Fu Yunhan would misunderstand her, hurriedly expressed her loyalty. "I didn't agree with him. Although we argued, you're still my fiancé. I wouldn't side with an outsider against you." Hearing this, Fu Yunhan curled the corner of his mouth, suddenly finding that this fiancé wasn't so annoying after all. He looked at Jiang Mian and promised, "With me here, I will definitely keep you alive and safe." Of course, once he leaves, whether this fragile flirtatious flower can continue to live isn't something he can decide. "Fu Yunhan, I really like you." Saying that, she lunged forward. Fu Yunhan instinctively used his arm to block Jiang Mian's face, preventing her from succeeding. However, the moment she made contact with Fu Yunhan, Jiang Mian activated her ability. Successfully copied genetic ability. Grand Master Blade Technique. Today she had used up her last chance, and still hadn't copied the ability she wanted. Yet looking at the Grandmaster Blade Technique ability, Jiang Mian couldn't help feeling a little tempted. She even comforted herself inwardly. Actually, this ability isn't bad. Maybe I'll just pick this one. Who knows, the fire-type power I copied might not be as useful as a healing ability. But her unwillingness still drove her. Fine, if it really doesn't work out, I'll just choose to copy this blade technique once the game ends. After giving herself that little reassurance, she finally felt somewhat relieved. I successfully acted as a double agent today, very successfully, and not without gains. On the third day, someone suddenly knocked. This time it was Fu Yunhan who opened the door. The staff outside glanced at Fu Yunhan in surprise, then at the record sheet in their hand, and only then said, "In 7 days. There will be a banquet on the 11th floor. Important people from above will attend. These are your invitations." As they spoke, the staff took 2 black invitations from their chest. The black cards were adorned with gold patterns, and when the invitations were handed over, a faint floral scent could even be detected. Fu Yunhan accepted the invitations and brought them back to show Jiang Mian. Jiang Mian opened the invitation and glanced at it, finding a line of information written on it. Dear Sir, Madam, welcome aboard the Fullman family's liner. Our travel destination this time is Serre Isle. The voyage will last about 30 days. To alleviate boredom during the journey, the Fullman family has specially arranged entertainment on the 10th day. Guests who receive this invitation are kindly requested to attend punctually. When Jiang Mian saw the invitation, she wondered how another new character had been unlocked. Did that mean she had to start making up lies again? As expected, Fu Yunhan began to probe for information. Jiang Mian, do you know anything about this Fullman family, Serre Isle, or the entertainment on the 10th day? Jiang Mian shook his head, putting on an expression of naive ignorance yet seeming like a lovesick person willing to go abroad for true love, and said, about that, I'm not really sure either. We left in such a hurry that I didn't even take a good look at whose ship it was. I only knew that once we left land, we were free. Fu Junhan felt somewhat disappointed, and also despised the original owner of this body. How could he let a girl who only had eyes for him suffer like that? If he really loved her, he wouldn't let her go abroad. He'd use his own efforts to convince the girl's parents. Any man worth his salt understands that doesn't believe the original owner wouldn't know? Looking at Jiang Mian's self-reproachful expression, he comforted him, it's okay. Not knowing is fine. Anyway, when the time comes we'll go and find out. Fu Junhan, you're so good. Jiang Mian's words left Fu Yunhan dumbfounded, and he took it sweetly. In fact, Jiang Mian had no idea about the two people's real identities. She was speaking off the cuff based on what was in the suitcase. As for the story about the wealthy young miss and the poor boy eloping, that was just her making things up. She didn't expect Fu Yunhan to actually believe it, and to be completely convinced. Jiang Mian suddenly felt guilty, as if she were deceiving a gullible boy. Sorry, brother. Who told you to be so simple and easy to fool? Chapter 18 Cruise Crisis 8. Brother Zhou. I just received new intelligence. The natives whose doors were knocked on by the patrol got an invitation to go to the 11th floor. The date on the invitation is 7 days from now. The details aren't written, maybe it's related to the mission. In a cabin on the cruise ship, the few who had stopped Jiang Mian in the bathroom earlier, including Song Qianqian, were gathered around a table hashing out a plan. Song Qianqian held up her phone and pointed to a photo on it. It was clearly an invitation from the Furman family. Brother Zhou frowned when he saw the photo and looked at Song Qianqian with some displeasure. Why did you only get the photo and not the invitation? Song Qianqian's face stiffened. She had expected praise from Brother Zhou for digging up the information. But instead she was blamed for being ineffective. If Brother Zhou weren't the most dominant in their small group, and the one with the most useful power, she would have long stopped putting up with someone who only orders others around and left. Seeing this, another man with a sharp, monkey-like face hurriedly smoothed things over. Brother Zhou. Qianqian was only trying not to alert anyone. If we had spooked the patrol, we'd have to go through questioning again. You know how difficult it is to get involved with the locals. Qianqian was only doing it for our own good. That's right, Brother Zhou. Sister Qianqian has already done very well. Besides, we don't even know what this thing is for. If we act rashly and are discovered, it's easy to disappear without a trace like those people. Hearing everyone's comfort, Song Qianqian's expression finally improved somewhat. The man called Brother Zhou thought the same and, looking at Song Qianqian's sullen face, reluctantly comforted her. All right, Qianqian, you know I was too impatient, which is why I scolded you. Besides, isn't this all for the sake of the team? After all, it's really not easy for the 6 of us to meet, and to have such good luck to meet again shows how deep our bond is. Now the fence-sitters in the team began to make their move again. The same sharp-faced man spoke first. Yeah, Qianqian, Brother Zhou is just looking out for us, that's why he's a bit anxious. Another petite girl also chimed in to comfort her. Qianqian, don't be at odds with Brother Zhou. Right now the mission comes first. Although we haven't found any danger so far, this is, after all, a survival game. Have you all forgotten how dangerous the last world was? When she said that, Song Qianqian remembered the dangers of the previous world, and immediately stopped sulking. After a bit more discussion, They finally made their plan. They chose to steal the invitations. Other players who learned about the invitations also began showing their skills. Some chose to steal like Zhou and the others, some went for outright robbery, and some even resorted to murder. Jiang Mian happened to run into those who chose to kill outright. What on earth had Fu Yunhan gone out to do again? Jiang Mian was left alone in the room when, by chance, someone knocked on the door. "Hello, ma'am. Room service." Hearing that, Jiang Mian peered through the peephole to size up the people outside, 3 of them, all appearing to be male. One was well-built, about 1.8 meters tall. The other 2 were just over 1.7 meters, looking extremely scrawny compared to that man. Jiang Mian noticed that one of the skinny men had his hand tucked into his sleeve, fiddling with something. The peephole's visible range was far too small to see the people outside clearly, but these 3 gave Jiang Mian the feeling of those kinds of people often seen in the apocalypse, people who had killed before. She had always been accurate in judging others and had no reason to doubt her own view. She was never one to challenge her first instinct, firmly trusting her intuition. Looking at the 3 of them, Jiang Mian thought, as long as they don't have guns, aren't they just toys for me to roll and flatten as I please? However, the current problem was that she didn't know whether they had guns, nor did she know what special abilities veteran players who had played the game several times might have, and that made her unwilling to act rashly. Seeing that he had knocked for so long with no answer, the man inside glanced at those beside him, at one of the young men. The young man immediately said, "Brother Dao, I can't be wrong, there's indeed only one person inside. That person must be hiding and too afraid to come out. Maybe they're even a player." Brother Dao's eyes lit up when he heard that. "A player? Great, maybe we can rob some items off whoever's inside." With that thought, Brother Dao told the 2 to step back. He fiddled with the lock, and before long it clicked and the door opened. Jiang Mian could hear the 3 people outside talking as if they were right inside. She could already rule out one of the men. His ability only let him sense the presence of living people, nothing to fear. As for the other 2, she believed she could fly and heal injuries. Facing 2 men with unknown abilities, she might not necessarily lose. Most importantly, she had a gun in her hand, which was her greatest confidence. So when the door opened, she deliberately stood unobtrusively in a corner, and waited quietly for the 3 to arrive. When the burly man opened the door, all that met his eyes was pitch darkness. Even the only window that could let in light was blocked. At that moment, one of the young men shouted, "Brother Dao, someone is coming from your left." In front of this young man, besides the red dot where the 3 of them stood, another red dot had appeared 3 meters away from them. So upon realizing the other red dot was rapidly approaching them, he hurriedly shouted. Unfortunately, it was too late. Originally Jiang Mian's first target had been the burly man, but now she realized that this man seemed more deserving to die first. So she didn't hesitate and switched targets. Dao Ge only felt a warmth on the left cheek, then heard a thud as someone fell to the ground. The underling who had just been warning him was now completely silent. His eyes bulged with rage. He knew he had provoked someone he shouldn't have, but by the time he realized it, it was already too late. He spun around to retreat, but the door had been locked from the inside. Brother Dao immediately reacted and tried to negotiate with Jiang Mian, saying, "Brother, I didn't mean to offend you. If you're willing to let us go, we'll leave right now." What the burly man said with his mouth, however, was actually an attempt to locate where Jiang Mian was hiding. The moment Jiang Mian spoke, he could find him in an instant and turn the tables. Chapter 19 Cruise Crisis 9. Jiang Mian naturally had no idea what he was thinking, but she wasn't the type to enjoy talking while killing. Until she was sure the danger was gone, she refused to expose anything about herself. In the darkness, wearing night vision goggles, she watched the 2 men before her. The burly man stood there dumbly, guarding against her sneak attack, while the other man was already prone on the ground, crawling toward the corner. Seeing this, Jiang Mian knew. If she was going to kill, she had to kill the burly man first. As for the other man clinging to life and afraid to die was not worth worrying about. Just as Jiang Mian closed in, the burly man seemed to sense her and hurriedly threw a punch in her direction. She easily dodged and then noticed that the man didn't seem to have a weapon in his hand. "Is this it? You dare to mug me?" Are you counting on being stronger, or on having a more powerful ability? Thinking this, Jiang Mian's vigilance increased a few degrees. The burly man said in Jiang Mian's direction, "Brother, I've already said it's a misunderstanding. If I'm not mistaken, you're just a newcomer. Facing me, your chances of winning aren't great. Why don't we shake hands and call a truce? And from now on our waters don't mingle." Unfortunately, Jiang Mian was like a rat in the gutter. She would never expose her position openly. So she pretended not to hear the burly man's words about cooperation and apologies. Why should his calling it a misunderstanding make it one? Was prying open her door a misunderstanding? Was trying to kill her a misunderstanding? Those who kill will themselves be killed. From the first time Jiang Mian killed someone, she knew that one day she would be killed too. Sure enough, in her previous life it was at someone else's hands. If this man dared to harbor murderous intent toward her, he should understand that he would be killed in return. Jiang Mian took a silenced pistol out of the space and fired a shot at the thug's head. With a PFF sound, the thug's eyes went wide and he collapsed to the ground. His ability hadn't even manifested before he died just like that. Before dying, the burly man was still thinking, didn't they say there's just a rookie inside? How could he afford a pistol worth 500 gold? The burly man died unwilling. After dealing with the two, Jiang Mian looked at the man still crawling forward and immediately shot through the man's arm. The man instantly cried out in pain. But the next second he forcibly clamped his hand over his mouth. He thought this would prevent him from revealing his position, but what he didn't know was that Jiang Mian had been watching the three of them move clearly from the very beginning. Seeing the dagger fall from the man's arm, Jiang Mian gave a soft snort. "I thought you were hiding something. It turns out to be just a dagger." However, what surprised the man more about being discovered was, "You're actually a woman?" Jiang Mian snorted coldly, stepped on his face with one foot, and said curtly, "Instead of worrying whether I'm male or female, you'd better worry about yourself whether you can get out of here alive under my hands." The man came to his senses and immediately begged for mercy. "Big sister, I'm sorry, big sister. I was forced into it. If I didn't join Brother Dao's team, he'd have killed me. I have a son and a daughter in my world too. I want to go back alive. I don't want to die. That's why I joined them." Jiang Mian felt nothing for his words. It was true the man had a son and daughter and wanted to live. But her family had a grandmother and a younger brother. Should she die for that? Should they have the right to kill her? I didn't want to hear a man sobbing, so Jiang Mian pressed a gun to his head and asked her question. "Why did you open my door? What did you hope to get from me?" With a gun at his head, the man was naturally extremely honest. Whatever Jiang Mian asked, he answered. Someone got wind that some players and natives had received new leads, namely invitations. However, some people didn't get an invitation, so those of us without one started to seize the people who did. I originally didn't want to do this. I just wanted to go home alive. Miss, believe me, I really never hurt anyone. Jiang Mian gave no reply to his words. She mentally ignored the man's final useless sentence, then asked, "How many times have you completed the game, and what is the catastrophe in your world?" "Twice. This is my third time participating in this game. Many mutated animals appeared in our world. Some of them ate all the food. We had no choice but to take part in this game to obtain food." "Get food? How do we get food?" Hearing Jiang Mian's question, the man became even more certain of his thoughts. This woman really is participating in the game for the first time, and hasn't experienced the cruelty of the apocalypse, so her chances of survival will be greater. With that thought, he didn't dare to fudge anything and told everything he knew truthfully. After completing a survival task, we return to a pure white space where the rewards for the task are settled. Generally, there will be at least 100 coins as a base, and your special performance in the task world can earn you extra points and more coins. I remember when I used to join the game. I heard someone say that a top player once got 10,000 points in a single world, and just took off. Unfortunately, it didn't last long. He was too arrogant, and got killed by an even stronger big shot. Jiang Mian nodded and asked again, "What can gold coins buy? Can you buy space with them?" Gold coins can buy anything, including space, but space is too expensive. 1 cubic unit of space costs 10,000 gold coins, so very few people buy it. Jiang Mian asked a few more questions, draining this man of his last useful information. And only then did she prepare to send him on his way. On the verge of death, the man was still fantasizing that he had escaped. Big sister, I've told you everything. Can I leave now? Don't worry, I promise I won't tell anyone about what happened today. Too bad, I don't trust the character of thieves like you. Rather than pin my hopes on you and rely on your tight lips, it's better to settle the matter once and for all. After speaking, Jiang Mian didn't give the man another chance to speak and sent him on his way. After finishing everything, she finally removed the black cloth from the window, and then put the bodies of the several people into the breeding enclosure. Actually, dead things can be placed into the space, but Jiang Mian felt a bit squeamish, so she put the bodies into the breeding enclosure. It was precisely because of this action that the breeding enclosure suddenly emitted a notification sound. Chapter 20 Cruise Crisis 10. Detected food for the brain-eating worms. Feed the brain-eating worms? Seeing that prompt, Jiang Mian was startled. She glanced again at the 3 corpses she had just placed in, thought for a moment, and decided to feed one corpse first. After watching for a while, and noticing nothing had changed, Jiang Mian withdrew her attention. The scene of the fight was a mess. She needed to put things back where they belonged, and then wipe the bloodstains clean so Fu Yunhan wouldn't notice anything amiss. She wasn't sure if it was her imagination, but she kept smelling the tang of iron at her nostrils. Jiang Mian took the famous brand perfume 6 got out of the space. She sprayed a bit in every corner of the room, especially more where the several people had died, then opened the windows to ventilate. Smelling that distinctive perfume scent, she immediately felt much more alert. Just then, there was a knock at the door again. Jiang Mian frowned. Are so many people ganging up on her to fleece her today? When she realized there were 2 girls outside, she didn't relax her guard. Who are you? Why are you knocking on my door? Hearing a response from inside, the 2 girls exchanged a glance and said, Miss, don't misunderstand. It's just that in the past few days, people who have the invitation letters issued by the Fullman family have been targeted by others. Several people have already been injured, so we decided to band together to resist those lawless elements and want to invite you to join us. From what they said, they seem to be locals, so they should know what the invitation letters do, right? Thinking this, Jiang Mian opened the door and invited the 2 in. The 2 girls handed Jiang Mian a card. Seeing his puzzled look, they explained, this is the new invitation issued by them. After you enter your information here, you can use facial recognition to pass the access control. The other girl said, with this thing, you don't have to worry about those criminals stealing it, because your information has already been recorded. Even if they try to take it, they can't. Jiang Mian nodded and feigned casualness as he asked, tell me, why would that group try to steal the Fullman family's invitation to us? What could they possibly gain from it? Hearing that, the girl who had first handed Jiang Mian the card covered her mouth and giggled. What else could it be? They just want to be noticed by the sons and daughters of the Fullman family, to leap from the branch and become phoenixes. Jiang Mian twirled the card between her fingers, her gaze shifting as she put on a mocking expression and said, I'm afraid they've paid such a high price for more than just a little gain. Seeing her like that, the 2 of them perked up as if they'd found a gossip circle, whispering, I'll tell you secretly, but don't tell anyone. I've heard that among those on the cruise is an up-and-comer, the eldest son of the Chongqing Group. Chongqing Group, you know it? It's the company that makes a lot of famous potions. Jiang Mian nodded. Well, I've heard of them for a long time. It's because of them that I boarded the cruise. She shifted tone and lowered her head a little, sounding a bit disappointed. It's just a pity me family's influence is too small. We only know this one bit of information. We don't know what other special things might be coming. This matter I only heard about. Just heard. Okay. The girl said mysteriously, I heard that this time Chongqing Group actually put out 10 eternal elixirs. Eternal elixirs. These are things every family covets. Having an eternal elixir, wouldn't that be having endless life? Although our chances of getting an eternal elixir are slim, if we could catch the eye of the young master of Chongqing Group, in the future, wouldn't we be able to get whatever elixir we wanted? I've been drooling over everlasting youth for a long time. Jiang Mian also showed an envious expression. After seeing the two off, she finally processed the information she'd received. She held the card between her fingers, turning it over every now and then. It seems the invitation I received a few days ago actually means something. The Fullman family, Chongqing Group, Yongsheng, and the two girls who assumed this was a sex transaction? When you connect these things, it's far more complicated than it appears on the surface. Just then, Jiang Mian suddenly thought of the brain-eating worms in her breeding space. She put her consciousness into the place where she was raising them, and was suddenly struck with alarm. He actually cursed out loud. Damn it! How did the dead person come back to life? The burly man who had been dead was now standing in the breeding farm for brain-eating worms, blankly staring ahead. Jiang Mian was truly shaken to the core by the scene. After a while, she remembered to click on the description of the brain-eating worm. Brain-eater breeding area. After reaching adulthood, brain-eaters gather on sentient beings and live in their stead. Living hosts are more conducive to survival. Jiang Mian swallowed, and tried to set the man's corpse free. The moment it was released, it twitched like it had been electrocuted, its limbs moving uncontrollably. Jiang Mian was on high alert, her gun trained on the corpse. If there was any sign of abnormality, she would mercilessly finish the man off again. After about a minute, the man's movements finally stopped. He looked at Jiang Mian and said, "Master." Jiang Mian wasn't surprised by his address. The brain-eating worm was raised by her, it belonged to her, so calling her master was only natural. She looked at the man whose body was controlled by the brain-eating worm and asked, "Do you have memories from before you died?" The man shook his head. "Sorry, master, I have no memories. I only know that you are my master." "All right." Jiang Mian nodded, indicating she understood. She released the strong man's corpse again, and asked the brain-eating worm, "Do you see this corpse? What do you think of him?" Brain-eating worm, "I see him, I want to eat." Jiang Mian didn't understand what it wanted to eat, so she let it act as it pleased. "If you want to eat something, go eat it yourself." The brain-eating worm received the command and lunged straight at the man. He opened his mouth wide, and several black, hair-thin worms surged out from his mouth and into the wound on the top of the strong man's head. Jiang Mian watched as those brain-eating worms burrowed into the strong man's skull. Then they pulsed a few times and actually made sucking sounds like a human drinking milk tea. She didn't feel nauseous, she just quietly watched it all. 10 minutes later, the brain-eating worm seemed full. The burly man lying on the ground opened his eyes, his eyeballs rolled and, as if with great effort, returned to a normal appearance. He stood up and looked at Jiang Mian, saying, "Master, I'm full." Jiang Mian nodded, then gathered the two bodies back into the breeding pen. Before leaving, she had the brain-eating worm split off a few hair-thin larvae for her. Chapter 21 Cruise Ship Crisis 11. The insect crawled onto Jiang Mian's hand, quiet and exceedingly well-behaved. She placed the insect in Fu Yunhan's quilt. It was so tiny that unless you looked closely, you wouldn't notice it at all. She wanted to see what methods Fu Yunhan might have to deal with these insects. Of course, it would be even better if he couldn't get rid of them after all. According to the description of the brain-eating bugs, the living are more valuable than the dead. She also wanted to see what a living person would look like after being parasitized. "What, you say the two are teammates? What kind of teammate relationship do those two have?" "It's nothing but mutual exploitation." By evening, Fu Yunhan finally returned. Jiang Mian still didn't know what he had been busy with all day. What Jiang Mian didn't know was that not everyone found it easy, because they had cheats. When faced with the unknown, they had to try things little by little to probe out the source of danger. If everyone were like her, wouldn't this survival game be nothing more than playing house? "You're back. Let me tell you, I was scared to death today." Jiang Mian told Fu Yunhan everything that had happened today. Of course, her story was that after the burly men couldn't open her door, they left. Then she handed the card to Fu Yunhan. "These two girls gave this to me today. They said it's from the Fullman family, a new invitation made after the recent invitation snatching incident. It's electronic. You don't need to be online to log in. We just need to scan our faces then, and we'll be able to enter the banquet." Fu Yunhan took the card, pulled out his phone and logged into the website, then outwardly showed concern while actually trying to probe for information. Did they say what this banquet is about? Seeing Jiang Mian's puzzled look, Fu Yunhan really felt foolish. He'd been on the cruise for a week. Aside from knowing that the crew had been acting strange in fits of agitation, and that the ship's water was undrinkable, he hadn't uncovered any other news. He'd let himself get flustered, and actually asked about this from a woman who normally never leaves the house. But unexpectedly, Jiang Mian actually gave him an answer. They were saying today that it seems this banquet was held to get the attention of the big families and obtain resources, which is why it's happening. And it seems they're both especially fond of the other leading figure at this banquet, the eldest young master of Chongqing Group. Jiang Mian polished what the two girls had told her a bit before telling Fu Yunhan. Seeing Fu Yunhan's surprised look, Jiang Mian showed a slightly smug smile. What are you staring at me like that for? Did you really think she'd been freeloading all these days? Jiang Mian was certain that none of the players on the ship knew more than she did now except, of course, the natives. Fu Yunhan withdrew his gaze and unusually praised her. It's nothing, I just think you're pretty impressive, and you know how to gather information. Jiang Mian grabbed Fu Yunhan's arm, activated her power, and teasingly said, if I'm this impressive, aren't you going to give me some reward? Fu Yunhan frowned. But over the week they'd been together, Jiang Mian had frequently launched sudden little attacks like that. And Fu Yunhan had grown somewhat accustomed to them, so for the moment he didn't pull his arm away. He dragged Jiang Mian's body, keeping her from falling, and even shifted over a bit to give her some space. Jiang Mian had no intention of sitting on his sofa. She stood up, turned, and lay down on the soft big bed. Humph, stingy, I'm not talking to you. I'm going to sleep. Jiang Mian, facing away, almost had a grin stretched to her ears. Successfully copied Jin ability. Eternal burning flame. Fu Yunhan's ability was finally in her hands. Do you know how hard she worked for this ability? She tried every way to touch Fu Yunhan every day, almost turning herself into a nymphomaniac, groveling and kowtowing, and even having to provide him with emotional support and intelligence. She was exhausted. Fortunately, heaven rewards the diligent. She finally obtained his ability. Jiang Mian quickly duplicated it. Fu Yunhan pieced together all the information in his mind, but unfortunately, not knowing the creature called the brain-eating worm, the only dangers he could think of were from the Fulton family and the pills from the longevity group. He lay on the bed and suddenly felt something crawling on his leg, tickling, making it hard to ignore. His expression changed, and he threw off the covers in an instant. He could no longer hide. There was a burst of flame directly covering his calf. Jiang Mian seemed to hear a scream in his mind. She quickly sat up, looked at the flames on Fu Yunhan's legs, and pretended to be shocked as she covered her mouth. Fu Yunhan, you're on fire, ah. It was kind of ridiculous when you thought about it. She just sat on the bed, hugging her legs and pointing in Fu Yunhan's direction, though her words were frightened and shocked. She had no intention of taking any action. She didn't get out of bed until the flames on Fu Yunhan's legs were put out. Jiang Mian pointed at his leg and exclaimed in surprise, "Are you okay? Why did you catch fire just now?" Fu Yunhan shook his head and reassured her, "I'm fine. You sit on the bed first. There's a bug here, don't let it crawl on you." When Jiang Mian heard that, she pretended to be frightened and sat on the bed. Watching Fu Yunhan pick up a black insect from the floor, no thicker than a hair, she curiously stepped closer. "What is this? Is it one of my hairs?" Fu Yunhan's expression was extremely serious. "If it's not your hair, it should be some kind of mutated creature. If anyone comes knocking recently, don't open the door for them. Wait until I get back and we'll talk, understand?" After thinking for a moment, he added, "Starting today, don't use the food in the dining room. And don't drink the water from the bathroom. I'll leave enough water in the room for you. Try to conserve it as much as possible." Seeing Jiang Mian obey so obediently, Fu Yunhan also breathed a sigh of relief. No need for him to explain the reasons to Jiang Mian. Jiang Mian pointed at the bug and asked, "What is this? Where did you find it?" Fu Yunhan shook his head. "I don't know what it is. Maybe it crawled out from the sewer. For some reason it ended up on my bed. I'll check your bed in a bit. If there's one there too, we might have to change rooms." He just felt it was a hassle, even wondering if some enemy of his was deliberately taking revenge. Fortunately, after his careful search, he only found that one bug. Fu Yunhan went out for a while. When he returned, he had a backpack on his back filled with bottled mineral water, and some simply packaged bread and compressed buns that didn't list a manufacturer. His explanation was, "Don't go out to buy food recently. I suspect these things came from the water. The food on the entire ship might be dangerous. Just hold on for now. It'll be fine once the ship reaches land." Chapter 22 Cruise Crisis 12. Jiang Mian nodded heavily. She didn't ask where he had gotten those things. Anyway, he gave them to her, so she took them. Of course, Jiang Mian wouldn't eat any of that. She was afraid the man would poison her, but she could leave it for others to eat. Fu Yunhan was very pleased with Jiang Mian's cleverness and sense of propriety. The next day, Fu Yunhan went out as usual to look for clues. What he didn't know was that Jiang Mian, whom he thought obedient and sensible, was currently meeting with his mortal enemy. Jiang Mian no longer showed the obedient demeanor she had in front of him. She was putting on an act. She held a card in her hand and smugly looked at He Ling opposite her. "You mean this thing? Hey. Aren't you supposed to be Fu Yunhan's rival? How come you can't even get hold of this? You're really pathetic, huh?" He Ling didn't understand why a woman he hadn't seen for only a few days had become so arrogant and brazen. He looked at Jiang Mian's disdainful attitude and immediately grew angry. "Are you just itching to be cheeky, or do you think you can break away from me and protect yourself now?" Jiang Mian shrugged. "My dear partner, what are you saying? I'm just concerned about you a bit. How can you think so ill of me?" He Ling narrowed his eyes. Just as he was about to lose his patience, Jiang Mian finally brought up his request. "I feel that, regarding our previous cooperation, the terms of cooperation seem a bit unfair to me. Didn't you say you'd protect me until the end of the game? But when I faced danger, I couldn't find you at all, nor could I contact you. Your protection is just empty words. I don't see any sense of security at all. How about this? You redeem some life-saving items for me from the system, and we continue our previous cooperation. How's that?" At her request, He Ling scoffed coldly. "It seems you've picked up quite a bit of information these days. You even know you can buy items." Jiang Mian smiled without speaking at his compliment. She knew this man still had more to say. Sure enough, He Ling shifted his tone and immediately attacked. "But have you considered that, in my eyes, you're nothing more than an ant right now? You have no qualification to speak to me as an equal." Jiang Mian barely dodged his attack. Then a ball of flame occupying a third of her palm appeared in her hand. She pressed the fire directly onto He Ling. Seeing this, He Ling sneered. "Is this your awakened ability? That's it. You actually think your flame is Fu Yunhan's flame?" Having achieved her goal, Jiang Mian said no more and intensified the flame's burning power. He Ling was startled, looking at the small flame in disbelief. Though tiny, it inflicted damage he could not recover from. "How is that possible? How could I fail to extinguish your fire? Because my heart for you is burning hot enough." Jiang Mian tried to make a joke, but unfortunately He Ling didn't get it. "Put out the flames first, and then I can renegotiate the terms with you." "No, no, no." Jiang Mian held up an index finger and waved it in front of her eyes before saying, "I don't dare trust you. What if after I put out the flame you try to kill me to silence me?" He Ling looked at her eagerly. "No, I wouldn't. Although your flame is weak, if used well it could play a big trick on Fu Yunhan. I certainly wouldn't kill you." After hearing He Ling's plan, Jiang Mian looked at him as if he were a pervert. "You're really such a dog. Fu Yunhan offended you has really out of luck. Same to you. Fu Yunhan meeting you is just as unlucky for him. Ha ha." The two glanced at each other and burst into laughter. "Then here's to a pleasant cooperation. Of course, I'm really looking forward to the day Fu Yunhan learns the truth." Jiang Mian nodded. "I'm looking forward to it too." Holding the item he had obtained, Jiang Mian returned to his room before Fu Yunhan came back. Jiang Mian looked at the card in his hand that could improve physical attributes and immediately chose to use it. After using the card, Jiang Mian felt pins and needles all over her body, as if her bones were itching. The sensation lasted for about an hour before finally stopping. She clenched her fist and tested the strength in her whole body. Then she took the composite bow out of the space. The bow that once required all her strength to draw now opened effortlessly in her hands. Jiang Mian looked at the 2 cards remaining and silently put them back into the space. Because the cards had a note advising that one should fully adapt to their current physical state before using a boost card, as doing so would make the enhancement more effective. Jiang Mian thought it made sense and therefore did not forcefully increase her power. Her current physical condition was more than sufficient for her. It was no less impressive than during the apocalypse. 2 days remained until the date on the invitation. Jiang Mian planned to go to the 11th floor to take a look. But she was stopped. Their reason was that the 11th floor was under renovation, and entry was not allowed. Jiang Mian turned to leave, and just as she was about to get off the elevator, she saw a familiar person. It was the woman who had shoved her back then. Jiang Mian didn't know her name, but she remembered that face very clearly. At this moment the woman was coming down the stairs, accompanied by several other girls. They looked like a little clique. They pointed at Jiang Mian and looked at her with contempt, speaking in what they thought was a low voice. Look, another woman desperate to climb up by hooking onto someone. She thinks she's somewhat pretty, so she acts like the rules don't apply and comes early to scout for a sugar daddy. They'll never realize that what they're chasing is merely a position we can't be bothered with. Having said that, Enku smiled sweetly at Jiang Mian. Feeling that this woman seemed familiar, but unable to place her. In her world, her status was actually quite formidable. She lived on the 15th floor and belonged to a small faction attached to the Fulton family. Because of that status, she successfully infiltrated the enemy's inner circle. But every gain has its loss. Although she understood what the banquet in 2 days was about, she didn't know what danger awaited her. Being a newcomer who had never seen the splendors of high society, she soon let desire cloud her eyes and spent her time indulging in looking down on others. Listening to the disdain in those women's words, Jiang Mian quietly committed a few of their faces to memory. She was never to be trifled with. When rumors of her being promiscuous were spread at school, she kept a calm exterior but secretly beat up the boy who started them. After that, whenever she heard someone spreading slander about her, she would secretly beat them up. And she even suspected she might be a super strong. Chapter 23 Cruise Crisis 13. Later she realized she wasn't super strong at all. She had just let out a roar whenever she saw injustice. Those few who were still pointing and talking didn't know that their time of death was about to come. If it weren't for the large number of people here and the armed patrols, they would have already been shoulder to shoulder, heading to the afterlife. When Jiang Mian returned to her room, she found Fu Yunhan hadn't come back yet. She didn't know what had happened to him, usually returned at this time. But she was only a little curious. She wasn't willing to go out and look for him. So what was Fu Yunhan doing at this moment? He was evading the patrol's search. By now he had reached above the 11th floor, which ordinary people were forbidden to enter. Seeing the luxurious scene before him, even the floor tiles of the indoor pool were made of gold. Even Fu Yunhan, who had been born into a wealthy family, couldn't help but exclaim. His parents had been ordinary merchants before the end of the world. They weren't greedy and lived honestly, which is how they had accumulated 100 billion fortune. Where had he ever seen a sight like this? Not only was the indoor pool like that, one floor up, the rooms were much like the hotel rooms downstairs. When he reached the 17th floor, the scene inside overturned his imagination even more. Stacks upon stacks of cash were laid out so openly right before him, filling an entire floor enough to make anyone envious. If he hadn't known that task worlds weren't the same as the real world, he truly would have wanted to take all that money. Even Fu Yunhan, who had weathered great storms, almost couldn't withstand the temptation, let alone anyone else. He was discovered before he even saw the scene inside when he reached the 18th floor. A group of armed patrol members, accompanied by well-trained hounds, began searching for his location. To avoid revealing his identity, Fu Yunhan never chose direct confrontation, and tried not to expose his abilities. Not until the next day did Jiang Mian see Fu Yunhan. Jiang Mian even suspected that Fu Yunhan might already be dead. When Fu Yunhan finally appeared, she smelled blood on him. Although treated, it still couldn't escape Jiang Mian's nose. After all, she had to smell this every month. She looked at Fu Yunhan and asked curiously, "What's wrong with you?" Why do I smell blood on you? Fu Yunhan shook his head. It's not my smell. Last night when I went out I ran into some people fighting, and I was an innocent bystander. For his clumsy explanation, Jiang Mian didn't say whether she believed him or not. She took Fu Yunhan's arm and said, Then I'll take you to the infirmary to get it dressed. You must go to the infirmary. Fu Yunhan hurriedly waved his hand to refuse. No need, I just didn't sleep well last night. I'll be fine after a nap, you don't need to worry. Since Fu Yunhan said so, Jiang Mian naturally didn't want to cause trouble for herself, so she went along and sat down on the bed. Then she went to the restroom with Fu Yunhan alone. Nobody knew what she was fiddling with, probably dressing the wounds on her body. When Fu Yunhan came out, Jiang Mian had already left. Seeing the noticeably increased patrols, she was very curious about what Fu Yunhan had done last night to cause such a fuss. Unfortunately, Fu Yunhan wasn't willing to say much. Jiang Mian went up to the deck and quietly breathed the sea breeze. Watching the calm scene on the water, she suddenly felt a comforting sense of peaceful days. If there were no apocalypse, how wonderful that would be. Facing the sea of the post-apocalyptic world, and wishing for a world without an apocalypse, Jiang Mian could only find it somewhat amusing. She let out a soft laugh. Qian Yuanan came down from the 16th floor to clear his mind and saw such a beautiful scene. He couldn't help himself and took a photo with his phone. He looked up, about to strike up a conversation with the girl in the picture, but when he raised his head he found she had already left. Aimed aside, and Qian Yuanan stood where Jiang Mian had left, looking in the direction Jiang Mian had been staring, but saw only a stretch of sea spray hitting the ship's side from the vessel's movement. Jiang Mian left because he had seen his target, Helling. The two moved into a corner and began to talk. Last night, Fu Yunhan didn't come back, and when he returned this morning there was blood on him. I don't know what happened. I asked him, but he wouldn't tell me. Helling nodded slightly. And thinking of the news he had received, he couldn't help laughing. Since you're so curious, I'll tell you. Last night, Fu Yunhan sneaked upstairs to scout for information, but instead of finding anything, he triggered a trap and was chased by the patrol all night. How do you know? Jiang Mian looked him up and down suspiciously. Helling spoke as if describing something trivial. It's nothing. I previously placed a probing eye on you. Then, through your connections, had the probing eye come to Fu Yunhan. I just saw it with my own eyes yesterday. Jiang Mian's expression changed. She glared at Helling through gritted teeth and asked, When did you put it on me? How come I didn't know? So you've known everything I've done all this time? Hearing Jiang Mian's accusation, Helling looked at her as if she were an idiot and said, Of course I put it on you the first time we met. As for whether I know everything you've done, rest assured on that point. You're not worth me spending that much to invest in. I'm not interested in your affairs. For a moment, Jiang Mian didn't know whether to feel happy or frustrated. The good news was, because he was too weak, he wasn't being monitored by that thing at all times. The bad news was, it meant he would have to be even more careful in his future actions. There could really be something in the world that watched others without them noticing. Glaring viciously at Helling, Jiang Mian turned to leave. Now that she knew what had happened the previous night, there was no need to continue living with this troublesome person. Helling reminded from behind, Hey, don't forget our plan for tomorrow night. Jiang Mian, I know, don't worry. Dead Joe the Skinflayer. Helling touched his nose and sighed. Sigh. How is it that telling the truth gets you scolded? You were weak to begin with. What use is watching you? It's just a waste of a tool. And now people can't even speak the truth? Women are really like needles in the sea. He shook his head and left in a different direction. When Jiang Mian reached the 3rd floor, she suddenly remembered the first day she came and saw that strange staff member. She wanted to see what that staff member looked like now. When she reached the 3rd floor, she was suddenly startled. The space on the 3rd floor was dim. Perhaps because it wasn't mealtime, there were no visitors inside, only staff members. What alarmed her, however, was that those staff members, with no guests around, were standing motionless by the windows, staring at the floor beneath them, an eerie sight. Chapter 24 Cruise Crisis 14. Jiang Mian took a step back and accidentally bumped the table and chair, making a sound. Almost in an instant, the lights on the 3rd floor all came on at once. and the staff who had been looking down suddenly looked up, staring at Jiang Mian. She could even see a few of the quicker reacting staffers who, without having time to refocus their eyes, just turned their dead, fish-like eyes to look at her. "Guest, may I ask what service you need?" Jiang Mian opened his mouth, finally recovering his voice. "Zhu, just give me anything." "All right, sir, please wait a moment." Everything about the service attitude was beyond reproach. The only thing that needed fixing was the staff member's dead fish eyes. To be honest, with those black pupils that looked like they were about to roll back, it really resembled rolling one's eyes. In the real world, he'd have been complained about hundreds of times by now. Jiang Mian had only waited 5 minutes when a staff member came out carrying a plate of steamed fish. Jiang Mian suspected it was a pre-made dish, but looking at the fish that still had its scales unscaled, what the hell kind of pre-made dish is this? Pre-made dishes wouldn't dare be this arrogant. "What's wrong? Is there a problem, guest? Why aren't you eating?" Jiang Mian looked up and saw nearly 100 staff members in uniform staring at her with vacant expressions. She kept oscillating between getting angry and backing down. And at that moment a patrol unit carrying guns suddenly passed by outside the door. Jiang Mian immediately shouted, "Hey, don't leave yet. Take a look, did your ship's crew make this food? What is all this? The fish still has its scales on, how can anyone eat this?" Hearing Jiang Mian's voice, the patrol turned around and looked this way. "What's going on?" Jiang Mian pointed at the dish the staff had put in front of him, and let the patrol watch for themselves. "Look at this, this something a normal person could eat? What kind of decent family eats this kind of half-raw fish? Do you think this is salmon sashimi?" The patrol also saw the fish on the table, and just then the fish in the plate happened to twitch. Good grief, this isn't half-raw, this is clearly a living, breathing fish. The patrol officers' faces darkened as they looked at the staff and said, "Get your supervisor here." Before long, a woman ran down from upstairs. After she learned the ins and outs of what had happened, she immediately flew into a rage at the staff. "What have you all been doing? You're getting more and more sloppy, aren't you? I think you might as well stop. Replace them. I want replacements. It's only been a few days, and how many times have you done this already? Each time someone complains, and I clean up your mess every time. Yet you keep repeating the same thing, don't you? If you don't want to work, then get out." The supervisor originally thought it would be a normal scolding, then apologized to the customers, and that would be the end of it. She didn't expect the staff who heard her words to just fling off their aprons and all walk out. This left the woman staring blankly. What? They're leaving just like that? Not supporting their families? Not trying to make a living? I used to scold them plenty, why are they sulking off now? The brain-eating worms hadn't expected it either. Having long lurked at the seabed and stealthily developed, the first thing they did after laboriously coming ashore wasn't to vigorously grow their own numbers. Instead, they painstakingly went to work for the very creatures that fed on them. That would have been bad enough, but they kept getting scolded, being woken up, and even being hit by the food they were talking about. Equit? Equit. We're not doing this job anymore. For a moment the manager was at a loss. She looked at Jiang Mian and said, "I'm really sorry about this guest. I didn't expect them to be so bad-tempered, we've really spoiled them. Please wait a moment, I'll get another team to cook for you." Jiang Mian raised a hand to stop her. "No, that's fine. After seeing those live fish my appetite's gone. You should go handle other things after all. Dinner time's in about 2 hours. With your staff all gone, it'll be hard to explain anyway." The supervisor thought the same, hurriedly thanked Jiang Mian profusely for her understanding, and even offered to provide her with free meals 3 times a day once things here were resolved. Jiang Mian smiled, and only then did she leave under everyone's watchful eyes. Once she was out of sight, her legs went weak. Just now, if the patrol team hadn't appeared, she probably would have been beaten to a pulp. These brain-eating bugs are really perverse. Is this what brain-eating bugs that use the living as food are like? They really are different from the ones that grew out of the corpses she fed. They all seemed a lot smarter now. But why was the food they made ice cold? She also recalled the brain-eating worm she had deliberately placed on Fu Yunhan's bed earlier. That brain-eating worm had looked terrified when it was being killed. Jiang Mian came up with one explanation. The brain-eating worms are afraid of fire. More precisely, they are afraid of things with relatively high temperatures. With that hypothesis, Jiang Mian relaxed and pressed her hands together in front of her, bowing slightly. Thank you so much to Big Brother Fu Yunhan for providing the flames. Thanks a million. Out of gratitude to Big Brother Fu Yunhan, Jiang Mian unusually went shopping at the mall today and bought him a suit. Of course, mainly she bought a long dress for herself. Besides, there was a black card in the suitcase, so she might as well spend freely. After buying herself more than a dozen dresses in a row, she finally remembered Fu Yunhan, and then picked out a mid-price gray suit and took it home. When Fu Yunhan woke up, he was exercising in the room. She couldn't tell what martial art he was practicing, but it looked powerful. Jiang Mian wanted to learn, but had no reason to pick up such a thing after all. Her persona was a pampered young miss. If she suddenly said she wanted to learn it, Fu Yunhan would inevitably start to doubt her identity. I bought you an outfit. You can wear this suit to the banquet tomorrow. After all, it's a formal event, and dressing a bit more properly will save a lot of trouble. On the way back, Jiang Mian put away the extra dresses, leaving only a single black long skirt. Seeing Fu Yunhan's surprised expression, Jiang Mian smiled and said, "Why are you looking at me like that? Wasn't it always me buying clothes for you before?" Fu Yunhan gained a deeper understanding of his own identity. Man living off a woman. He was torn by love, his brows knitted together. And in the end he only said one thing. Thank you. Jiang Mian happily accepted his thanks. Wasn't it what she deserved? As for what happened in the restaurant today, she didn't tell Fu Yunhan. After all, it was a clue she had painstakingly found. Fu Yunhan had found clues before and never told her either. Poetic justice. But Jiang Mian became a bit more wary of unfamiliar tourists. Who knows whether someone who appears normal on the surface might already have lost their mind in private. Chapter 25 Cruise Crisis 15. In the literal sense, the brain-eating insects consume the brain and then take over its functions. Meanwhile, nearly 100 staff gathered in the dormitory, standing face to face. They clearly weren't speaking. Yet someone would nod from time to time. They were vaguely acting around one of the young men. If Jiang Mian were here, he would recognize that this young man was the same one who had been beaten by the tourists on the first day. And the young man was also the first on the ship whose brain had been consumed by the brain-eating worms. As is well known, brain-eating worms are seabed creatures, and the kitchen is a place that comes into direct contact with seawater. Although the seawater has been purified through multiple stages and has eliminated 99% of bacteria and organisms, brain-eating worms are not ordinary bacterial organisms. They exist as a collective, and the leaders within the group even possess intelligence. To completely kill the brain-eating worm in its transparent state, you either have to disinfect it with high heat or boil it in boiling water for more than half an hour. Although nowadays most people use pre-made dishes. And often it's just a matter of putting the food in a pot, adding a little water, stir-frying it, and that's it. But after all, some side ingredients still need to be personally washed. As you can imagine, those who often handle the brain-eating worms in the kitchen were, of course, the first to suffer. In reality, a restaurant capable of feeding tens of thousands of people obviously wasn't limited to their 100 or so. They were merely the staff on duty at one time. By their current count, at least 2,000 people had already become their companions. Their companions would only grow in number. When his subordinate told him about it, the leader waved his hand. It's nothing. Once we have more people, they'll all be our food. You have to be more lenient with food, understand? The little brothers nodded. They unconditionally believed whatever the leader said. Jiang Mian was eating a self-heating hot pot bought in a store and not yet contaminated by brain-eating worms. Add a little water and it cooks itself. She leisurely ate her food and waited with Fu Yunhan for the evening to come. Hello, gentleman and lady. Please show your invitation. Jiang Mian wore a black gown and linked arms with Fu Yunhan. The two of them walked together up to the 11th floor. After taking out their electronic invitations, the staff scanned them with a scanner, and only then were they allowed inside. Jiang Mian whispered, "It actually looks pretty convincing. But isn't it just an ordinary banquet for networking with the powerful? Why make such a big mystery out of it?" Fu Yunhan didn't respond to Jiang Mian. He stared at the stairs leading upstairs, wanting to go up to the 18th floor again to see what secrets were really there, what had made the patrol so alert for so long. Just then, the two of them suddenly heard the commotion behind them. "Why won't you let me in? Don't I have an invitation? Are you blind?" "Sorry, miss, having an invitation alone isn't enough. You also need our internal electronic invitation." "When did you start using an electronic invitation? Why didn't you tell us?" Jiang Mian turned her head and saw someone familiar. It was the woman who had stopped her outside the restroom that day. The woman was now brandishing an invitation aggressively, questioning the staff. At first the staff tried to explain politely, but when they saw she was being utterly unreasonable and disrupting the guests in line and those waiting inside, the staff immediately drew a gun from his waist. "Ladies and gentlemen, please calm down. This is a rule of our banquet to prevent fugitives from sneaking in. If you keep causing such a scene, I'll have to start doubting your identities." Faced with the truth, Song Qianqian naturally shut her mouth. She looked at Brother Zhou, asking, "What do we do now? We can't get in." Brother Zhou gritted his teeth. Watching the others go in one by one, he suddenly thought of a brilliant idea. He led the 5 of them downstairs and robbed a lone weak woman, forcing her to hand over the internal electronic card pass. The woman raised her hands and obediently took out her card. After each of them logged in, they looked at the woman crouching in the corner and hesitated. In the end, it was the short-haired woman who hardened her heart. She slapped the woman's neck with her palm and knocked her unconscious. Only after confirming that the woman was truly out did they leave. Shortly after they left, the woman got up from the ground. She moved her neck, rolled her eyes, and then smiled as she walked to the 11th floor. In the time it took Jiang Mian to turn around, he saw the 6-person group that had been at the door just now again, and thought, could the staff be face blind? Can't they tell these people were just denied entry by him? In fact, to those controlled by the brain-eating worms, all humans looked exactly the same except for differences in gender. The only distinction they could make was between their own kind and humans. On the dining table in the hall were all kinds of exquisite foods. Jiang Mian politely declined them all. No matter how delicious, you needed to have a life to taste them. Just then, someone suddenly placed a hand in front of her. "Beautiful lady, may I have this dance?" Jiang Mian looked at the unfamiliar man and politely declined. "Sorry, sir, I already have a dance partner." "Oh, my apologies. I thought you were alone." After all, who would be willing to leave such a pretty partner behind? At that moment, Fu Yunhan saw what was happening and immediately stepped in to intervene. He grabbed Jiang Mian's small hand and asked faintly, "What's wrong? I was only gone a moment, and someone is already taking a fancy to you?" Jiang Mian waved her hand. "It's nothing. This gentleman just thought I was alone and wanted to ask me to dance." When the man saw Fu Yunhan appear, he wisely left. Just then, knock knock knock. The sound of the clock striking echoed through the hall, and the lights in the hall dimmed at once. Fu Yunhan tightened Jiang Mian's hand and whispered, "The banquet has officially begun." Jiang Mian nodded. As a country bumpkin, she had never seen anything like this before. Only truly wealthy people would understand it. At that moment, a spotlight suddenly shone from above, illuminating the man descending the staircase. The man raised his glass and said in a lofty tone, "Everyone, welcome aboard the Fullman family's luxury cruise. As the heir of the Fullman family, I should have met you all on the first day, but I've been busy recently negotiating resources with the Chongqing group, which delayed me a bit. I hope you won't mind." He said he hoped they wouldn't mind, but the haughty tone was hard to ignore. Those below heard it, but didn't dare to say much. From time to time you could still hear others offering compliments. Jiang Mian's mouth twitched. No, this man is really good at pretending. It's been 10 minutes and he still hasn't come down the stairs. If some disaster happens, he'll be the first to die. Chapter 26 Cruise Crisis 16. Perhaps sensing Jiang Mian's remark, the man who claimed to be the heir of the Fullman family finally descended. He raised his wine glass and said to everyone, "Come everyone, let us fully enjoy tonight's banquet." The others immediately raised their glasses and drank with the man. Whether they were players or passengers on the ship, the surface show was performed perfectly. At least it was the kind that would leave the man unable to find fault. Then Jiang Mian saw a scene that shocked her to the core. A man with a big belly took out a stack of cash, shoved it to two of the women, and the three of them brazenly went over to a sofa and began a restricted scene. No wonder she had seen before that when people came in, they went straight to the small room to the left of the door, and when they came out they were carrying a small suitcase. So that's it. No wonder the light above was always dim. This didn't happen just once. There were even some wealthy women casually throwing money onto men until the men bent over to pick it up, at which point the women stopped tossing cash. Not only that, some who considered themselves to have marketable skills began performing on the round stage. Of course, under the spotlight they weren't quite so reckless. At least they remained clothed. Fulman's didn't do that kind of thing publicly either. Instead he took several men and women into a room. Earlier they had said that the eldest young master of Chongqing Group did not attend this banquet. Jiang Mian felt somewhat physically uncomfortable. Using that as an excuse she planned to leave. Fu Yunhan also wanted to leave with her, but was stopped by a rich woman. "Little brother, come play with me. Sister's had her eye on you for a long time." Jiang Mian caught sight of it from the corner of her eye, but she had no intention of coming back to help Fu Yunhan out of it. Until she hid in the restroom, she unexpectedly heard ambiguous voices coming from a stall. The corner of her mouth twitched. She quickly changed her clothes, then left through the restroom window. The window there faced the sea, and there were no cameras on the wall, so she simply used her flying ability to go down. This was the first time Jiang Mian used that ability, and she found the sensation of flying in the air rather marvelous. She almost reached the lowest level when, afraid of being seen, she quickly suppressed her flight ability and made a single leap onto the deck. When she arrived at the place the two had agreed on, she looked around several times but couldn't see Heiling's figure. Instead she saw a tall girl there scanning the area. Heiling waited a long time and likewise didn't see Jiang Mian. Instead he saw a short, sleazy little mustached man. The two looked at each other in disbelief. "Heiling? Jiang Mian?" After calling out the name, the expressions of the two visibly crumbled. Jiang Mian said enviously, "What's with you? Why are you dressed so domineering?" Compared to Jiang Mian's envy, Heiling was speechless. "Was it necessary for you to make yourself look this ugly? Acting alongside you makes me feel insulted. But only like this will no one see through my gender at a glance. And it's easier to move. As for you like this? Still wearing a skirt easy to move in?" After saying that, Jiang Mian looked at him with some disdain. Heiling straightened his skirt. "What do you know? I'm not a brute. My fighting doesn't rely on brawn, so what I wear naturally doesn't matter." Jiang Mian snorted. "Too lazy to argue about such trivial things." She said urgently, "All right, don't say so much. Aren't we supposed to act? While there's chaos upstairs, hurry and move." Heiling was somewhat curious about what she said. Chaos? Did a fight break out upstairs? When it came to that topic, Jiang Mian grew a bit despondent. She waved her hand weakly and said, breathless, "No. Not the kind of chaos you mean." Upstairs was basically a large-scale PC scene everywhere, even in the bathroom. Heiling asked curiously, could it be that Fu Yunhan was also there doing that? "I don't know. When I left, I saw him being entangled by a rich woman, so I took the chance to get out of there." Hearing that, Heiling immediately burst into laughter. He laughed so hard he could barely straighten his back. "Ha ha. I can't take it, quick, help me up. Just the thought of Fu Yunhan being wooed by someone makes me laugh. Ha ha." Seeing him in such a pathetic state, Jiang Mian punched him twice. "Enough, stop gloating. Are we still going to carry out the plan or not?" "Yes, of course we are. Let the storm come down even harder." After speaking, the two put on the bandit exclusive hoods and set off directly toward the warehouse. Heiling kicked the door open and just happened to see several staff members spraying something over the warehouse. When they saw the two arriving, they began to panic. In an instant the two felt that something was wrong. Seeing the spray bottles in their hands, they immediately grew cautious. "Heiling, I'll hold them off, you go carry out the plan." "Okay." Jiang Mian nodded, and while the two sides were fighting, slipped around to the rear. He saw a double-edged sword appear in Heiling's hand. Swift and graceful movements dealt with the group of people opposite. Watching Heiling's delightful fighting style, Jiang Mian couldn't deny he was envious. However, she had her own path to follow. Once she developed herself, Perhaps He Ling would have to act according to her wishes. Thinking this, she felt a little better. Looking at the various frozen seafood stored in the warehouse, Jiang Mian tried to put them into the stasis space. However, the cube prompted that living things could not be stored in the space, though some things could indeed be placed inside. Jiang Mian looked closely, and found that the items that couldn't be stored in the space had all been sprayed with water droplets. Did you think Jiang Mian would give up those resources? No, you were wrong. She directly moved those goods that couldn't be put into the stasis space into the breeding farm, placing them there together with the brain-eating worms. Jiang Mian bent down and collected them, sweeping her hand to gather a large area at once. Later she got too lazy to collect twice at once, and simply put everything into the breeding space. It wasn't just boxes of frozen seafood in there, there were also some drinks and alcoholic beverages. In the ambient temperature section were chips and snacks, and the refrigerated section held fresh vegetables. Jiang Mian was afraid He Ling would get impatient, so she bent down and worked without stopping, not caring what she was putting away. She just kept collecting. Thankfully she had used the enhancement card He Ling gave her. Otherwise, with how frequently she was using the space, she probably would have felt dizzy long ago. Just then, she suddenly noticed a small door made of a different material. Jiang Mian instinctively retracted it into the space. Chapter 27 Cruise Crisis 17. Then Jiang Mian saw a slightly smaller storage room, and it didn't contain food or seafood, but boxes and boxes of gold. Jiang Mian covered her mouth, afraid she might scream if she couldn't hold back. She waved her hand, and her speed increased even more. I'll take it, I'll take it, I'll take. Mine, it's all mine. I want the gold. What's this? A century-old wine? I'll take it. 1,000-year coral? Take it. Cigarettes worth 1.88 million a pack? Put them away. After she finished collecting those things, she immediately looked down on the items outside, just some ordinary food, and besides, she'd nearly finished gathering what she wanted. She couldn't leave Helling waiting out there forever. What if he got impatient and barged in? Wouldn't he then discover the secret of her possessing a space? Thinking this, she set a fire right there in the empty warehouse to make it look convincing. Then she poured the low-quality counterfeit liquor she had bought in the real world onto the outer shelving. She had originally planned to make a big profit from this in the real world, which was why she had bought so much cheap baijiu. In the apocalypse, let alone liquor, they couldn't even afford water. Baijiu would be sold at a much higher price. Don't be fooled by its current cheapness, later on it would be something worth a fortune. Now she didn't mind at all, pouring it all over the shelves and then starting the fire. Jiang Mian's thought was correct. Helling, having finished dealing with those people, had long since grown impatient. He'd been waiting here for almost 2 hours. Just as he was about to go look for Jiang Mian, he saw flames break out inside. Jiang Mian grabbed him and they ran straight out. After changing clothes in a nearby restroom, the two left directly through a window. Jiang Mian had originally planned to use her flying ability to take Helling away with her, but unexpectedly Helling simply scooped her up. The two of them instantly arrived at Helling's room. Ahem. Jiang Mian shoved Helling aside, grabbed the collar of his own clothes, and began breathing heavily. Are you crazy? I don't mind you holding my waist. So why did you grab my collar? Do you know? You almost suffocated me. He Ling glanced her up and down and said in a hesitant tone, if you were a beauty, I wouldn't mind putting my arm around your waist, but looking at you now, even holding your waist makes my hands feel dirty. Jiang Mian clenched her fists. What do you mean? Are you being sexist? Do you believe I won't post you online and get you cyberbullied? He Ling shrugged. Do whatever you want. We're not even in the same world. If you cyberbully me, I won't see it. He changed his tone, as if just realizing he'd been led by Jiang Mian the whole time. He asked, why are you so slow? I just told you to set one fire. Does it really need to take this long? Jiang Mian had already thought of an excuse for this. My ability is so weak, don't I have to use something like alcohol as an accelerant? Just like you said, setting one big fire would solve it. Although you think I don't want to? That's impossible. Knowing he couldn't win in a war of words with Jiang Mian, He Ling didn't make a fool of himself any further. He pointed to his watch and said, aren't you leaving yet? It's already been this long. It's easy for Fu Yunhan to notice something's wrong. Before leaving, Jiang Mian made a 8-hand sign, and with a bang too bad, Heling didn't understand what it meant. It really was like throwing a grenade for the dead to see. Jiang Mian didn't leave directly through the main gate, but took the old way out, leaving through the bathroom window. When she came back to the 11th floor again, she found those suggestive sounds still coming from the bathroom. She twitched the corner of her mouth, not sure which wave this was by now. She left in disgust and went to look for Fu Yunhan, but unfortunately, she couldn't find any trace of him. At that moment, Fu Yunhan, having evaded the rich woman, had successfully reached the 18th floor, where he saw what it meant to be utterly heartless. In one of the rooms, he saw people stripped naked, each labeled with their intended use. Some were as old as 35, the youngest only 6, yet they were bound inside transparent nutrient pods, their hands and feet tied. Their lives kept only by nutrient fluid. An female 9 years old, usable value. Heart, corneas, kidneys. Lin Sheng male 22 years old, usable value. Corneas, blood. Zhang Heng male 16 years old, usable value. He was terrified by this situation. What was inside was shocking. Every room had different conditions, but without exception, they were all test subjects. It wasn't until he opened the last door that Fu Yunhan noticed something different inside. There were several humans bound there. Unlike the others, they weren't placed in nutrient pods but were immersed in formalin. When they saw Fu Yunhan arrive, they immediately opened their eyes. One of the little girls formed words with her mouth and said to him, "Brother, save me." Fu Yunhan stepped forward and happened to see the notebook placed in front of the little girl. Guide to Observing Parasitized Humans. On the surface they look no different from humans, possess consciousness, but if you cut open their brains you will find them full of black worms. These creatures prefer to eat human and animal brains, and will live on in place of their hosts. We named this kind of insect the brain-eating worm, a parasite that specializes in eating brains. They are powerful, preferring dark, cold, and damp places, and they detest high temperatures and heat. Fu Yunhan continued to walk upward, and found the 19th floor was where the crew operated the ship. Going further up, there was nothing new aside from the top floor being a racetrack. There wasn't much else. Only then did he go back downstairs. Just as I arrived on the 11th floor, I saw Jiang Mian surrounded by a group of people, looking small, pitiful, and helpless. In fact, Jiang Mian had just smashed a man who had ill intent toward her over the head with a liquor bottle. Come on, beauty, that's way too much. If you don't want it, you don't want it. Why use your hands? Using your hands only causes trouble, you know? Jiang Mian pointed at the man clutching his head and wailing, saying, "Why are you asking me? Ask the real culprit. Ask him. How many times did I tell him I wouldn't accept his requests? It's like he couldn't hear me, as if he were deaf. How come you people nearby couldn't hear either? And as soon as I hit him, your ears suddenly start working? That may be, but you did hit someone after all. You should at least apologize." Jiang Mian looked at the man coldly, not expecting anything worthwhile to come out of his mouth. Why should I apologize? On the contrary, he should compensate me for emotional distress. After all, what he just said insulted my ears. Me ears are very precious, and he must pay me. Chapter 28 Cruise Crisis 18. Perhaps these people had never encountered such a sharp-tongued woman. For a moment, everyone froze. When Fu Yunhan walked over he saw exactly that scene. He shielded Jiang Mian behind him and, looking at the men across from them who were bristling with aggression, said, "If there's something you want to say it to me." A bunch of grown men bullying a young girl. What kind of skill is that? You're not a buddy. What's your relation to her? I'm her fiancé. I want to know what you intend to do to my fiancé. The man appraised the two of them from head to toe and uttered a cryptic remark. Damn. Unmarried couple. What are you two doing here? Don't you know where this place is? Jiang Mian thought. Maybe I didn't know before, but now she knows perfectly well. At that moment, a commotion suddenly arose downstairs. Jiang Mian chuckled lightly, knowing that the flames in the downstairs warehouse had been discovered. What's going on? I was near the door and overheard them talking. It sounds like there's a fire downstairs. What? A fire? We're on a ship right now. How could there be a fire? What do we do? Will we be burned to death? Don't be ridiculous. There are 2 more decks below. Even if there were a fire, it couldn't burn through. Some couldn't care less, while others wanted to gawk. In no time, the banquet fizzled out as abruptly as it had begun. Jiang Mian took the opportunity to leave. She knew that starting today, this cruise ship would inevitably descend into chaos, so she turned and walked away. As for the man she had groped her first, so getting hit was naturally his own fault. She felt no guilt whatsoever. Fu Yunhan looked at the silent Jiang Mian, thinking she had been frightened by what had happened today, and asked quietly, "Are you all right?" Jiang Mian shook her head. "I'm fine. I just find this banquet a little disgusting. I'm sorry, I didn't know the banquet would be like this. If I had known earlier, I would never have let you go through what you faced today. I'm truly sorry I wasn't there to protect you." He said this on behalf of the original owner. In his eyes, Jiang Mian was a delicate girl who was forced to become brave for love. He was very afraid that the scenes she witnessed today would shock her. "From now on, don't trust me too much. I may not be the person you can entrust your life to. Take better care of yourself, love yourself more, alright?" This sentence was said by Fu Yunhan for himself. Jiang Mian looked at him in surprise, finally breaking into a radiant smile. Trust? She doesn't trust Fu Yunhan at all. There's a big surprise waiting for him later. The two went downstairs and saw thick smoke billowing from the warehouse. Many people were holding fire extinguishers, and went in to try to put out the flames, but they returned empty-handed. "No, the fire inside is too intense, the automatic extinguishers aren't enough anymore. And this fire is too strange, it just can't be put out. What's going on?" "I don't know. The fire's been burning for an hour, the cold storage in the warehouse has melted. The floor is covered in water, and that still hasn't extinguished the flames. The fire is burning even more fiercely in the water. Where are the staff? Where did they all go? Aren't they going to put out the fire? And those patrol team members, what are they doing up on the upper floors? Hurry down and put out the fire." The deck was in complete chaos, and before long, the heir of the Fuelman family appeared. Appearing alongside him was a man wearing gold-rimmed glasses and a white suit, looking meticulous. The man looked at the flames inside the warehouse, then turned to Reed Fuelman and said, "Reed, is this your unique way of welcoming me?" Reed's expression was grim. He had only held a banquet, yet chaos had erupted below. He couldn't help but wonder which of his brothers had engineered this. He had only just become the heir of the Fuelman family, and was preparing to make a big move to win people's support, so finding such a huge commotion on the ship made it hard not to suspect his brothers had done it. Of course I wouldn't use the Fuelman family's interests as a stunt. This was definitely done by those who have it in from bribing people to set fire in the warehouse. They think that will take me down? How naive. Jiang Xinyan raised an eyebrow and, looking at Reed who was about to lose his mind, kindly reminded him, "Now is not the time to think about taking revenge on your brothers and sisters. Think about how to deal with this fire. From the looks of it, I'm afraid everything in the warehouse is burned up." Soon the patrolmen came down from the upper floors, and 5,000 patrol members began organizing the firefighting. For a time the blaze didn't spread further, but strangely, despite using every method, they still couldn't extinguish the flames completely. The other group of onlookers standing at the back grew contemplative, their gazes reflecting in the faintly visible flames. A 5-person team among them began whispering, "Baoga, these flames. Why do they feel so familiar? I keep thinking I've seen them somewhere before." Baoga twitched the corner of his mouth and said quietly, "Why wouldn't they be familiar? Didn't someone post a video on the forum before claiming they ran into a big shot from their world? That person's talent was fire. The color is exactly the same. Who else could it be?" Hearing that, a short-statured boy clapped his hands, as if a memory had just been triggered. "I just remembered, isn't that the one called Eternal Blaze? That big shot. The one ranked number 1 in combat power?" Bao Ji nodded. "That's the one. What rotten luck. How did we end up in the same world as a big shot? You know the world's difficulty is allocated based on the average power of the current world. With a big shot joining, it feels like we're doomed." The only girl in the 5-person team felt something was off. She said, "I met a friend on the forum before, and he said that Big Shot is pretty easy to talk to as long as you don't provoke him. He won't do anything to you. But why does the big shot we encountered seem different from the way he was described? Mommy. You keep calling him a big shot. It's normal for someone like that to be capricious. Maybe he was in a good mood before and didn't want to kill people. Molly nodded, thinking her teammate had a point. Just then, Brother Bao seemed to have figured something out and hurriedly said, "All right, let's not stay here. As far as I know, the big shot's flame ability can't be put out unless he himself chooses to extinguish it. Now that the warehouse has been burned, the food inside must be almost gone. Instead of standing here watching, we'd better hurry and collect some supplies. I remember there was a lot of food in the banquet hall. Come on, let's go quickly and let others get there first." Chapter 29 Cruise Crisis 19. So the five-man squad hurried upstairs. There were hardly any people left in the banquet hall, only a few stray couples still enjoying themselves. The five rushed to pack up the food in the banquet hall to take away. Whatever they couldn't carry they ate on the spot. Get lost, you pig-headed fool. Gone crazy from wanting women, have you? Jasmine was frantically stuffing food into her mouth at the table, when a man suddenly groped her thigh. His gaze was greasy, and the way he looked at her was as if he wanted to strip her clean. "Pretty lady, how much?" Hearing the words from his mouth and combining them with his look, it was obvious he took Jasmine for that kind of woman. Annoyed by his interference, Jasmine kicked him hard, sending him flying 2 meters, cursing as she did. Does she really think Jasmine is easy to bully? Her talent is immense strength. With just this one man whose body was emptied by lust, she alone can fight 8. No longer paying attention to the man on the ground clutching his stomach and wailing, the 5-person squad hurried away after finishing collecting supplies. Because there were some sensible people downstairs too. Upon learning the warehouse had been burned, and realizing there would be no food for the next 20 days, they also thought to go scavenging for supplies. Some people thought to go collect food from the restaurant on the 3rd floor, while others thought of the banquet hall. Of course, there were also some initial identities, the big shots from above the 10th floor, who went straight to their private small restaurants and started hoarding food. For a time, every deck of the great ship descended into chaos. Fu Yunhan's expression was very ugly. Looking at the familiar flames in the warehouse, if it weren't for the fact that his memories contained no scene of him going downstairs to set the fire, he would have suspected that he himself had started it. His talent was unique. At first he only awakened to ordinary flames, but after some later encounters his fire gained the trait of eternal burning. Now seeing someone else possess the same flame, how could he not be stunned? No. That's not right. My ability clearly states it's unique. It's impossible for anyone else to have the same ability as me. Then how is this possible? Fu Yunhan was a little disoriented. He even suspected the Doomsday Game was behind this. Just then, someone no one knew who said, "If we keep burning like this, won't we set the ship leaking?" The storage was on the B1 level. The flames had already completely burned through the 1st floor and B2. If they kept burning, it would be hard to say what would happen. Fu Yunhan squeezed Jiang Mian's hand and instructed, "Wait here for me. Don't go anywhere, understand?" Before Jiang Mian could answer, he slipped inside in the confusion. Guess what? When the other players see him coming out of the storage room, won't they all pin the blame for setting this fire on him? I suddenly feel so sorry for Fu Yunhan. She had long been used to the elusive Helling. Hearing his sanctimonious words only made her feel irritated. Jiang Mian hooked her fingers through hair mussed by the sea breeze, tucked it behind her ear and said, "Wasn't the plan designed by you? The plan is about to be completed now, and you're here spouting what kind of smug remarks? What, are you two putting on some lover's quarrel, a drama of force and seizure? At the final moment you can't bear to part with your old lover? Or are you going out to take the blame for him?" He Ling gave her a look that was hard to describe. "Can you not say such disgusting things? Who's acting out lovers' quarrels? If he ever shows up in front of me, I'd sooner kill him. Then don't put on an act in front of me. Who do you think you're fooling? Get lost. Aren't you afraid Fu Yunhan will see us together and get the wrong idea?" Jiang Mian brusquely told He Ling to get out. From the time they'd spent together, Jiang Mian thought she understood He Ling fairly well. He was the kind of person who discarded you once you were no longer useful. When you had value he might even ride roughshod over you. But when you cease to be useful, you'd have to consider the consequences of turning on him. But Jiang Mian wasn't afraid of him. After all, their cooperation hadn't ended yet. Didn't He Ling want to see Fu Yunhan's expression when he found out she was also a survivor, and had been using him all along? She hadn't completed that little victory yet, so Jiang Mian naturally wasn't afraid of He Ling killing her. After Jiang Mian snapped at him, He Ling felt it pointless to argue. He also noticed the fire in the warehouse had died down, so he left. It wasn't until they saw the flames inside extinguished that everyone finally breathed a sigh of relief. At that moment, some brilliant soul suddenly shouted, "The warehouse has been burning so long, are there any supplies left in there? If there's nothing to eat, how are we supposed to get through the next 20 days? Hearing that, everyone froze. Only then did the gathered people react, and they immediately fell into chaos. Those who were quicker-witted headed straight for the third floor. They needed to hurry and, while no one had reacted yet, grab some food to keep in reserve. Those quick to react were all players. Now it made sense to them why this world was so calm, with no zombies, no mutated animals, and no dangers at sea. Everything had been waiting here for them. A food crisis is far more brutally dangerous than most threats. Seeing the frenzied crowd, Reed and Jiang Xingyan both looked grim. They exchanged a glance and each understood what the other was thinking. The things inside the 18th floor absolutely must not be seen by these ordinary people. Jiang Xingyan led a group straight upstairs. And only after confirming that everything on the 18th floor was still there did he breathe a sigh of relief. If what they were researching had been discovered, one can imagine how massive the public outcry would be. By then, to prevent the spread of the controversy, they'd have no choice but to silence everyone on this ship. The cost of doing this would be too high. Not only would it offend many people, but it would also cause enormous losses for the company. Reed led dozens of people into the warehouse. Inside, everything was charred black. Many things had been burned to ashes. But none of that was what Reed cared about. He was concerned about the deeper stash of gold and his collectibles. Reed prayed inwardly, with the special door blocking the way. The fire shouldn't have spread in there. I hope whatever's inside is okay. However, when he reached the small door, he nearly fainted. The door to his vault had already disappeared. And the inside of the vault had been reduced to ashes. Nothing left, all gone, nothing at all. Search. Everyone search. I want to see exactly who did this. Whoever offended my Fullman family must have the heart of a bear, and the courage of a leopard. Reed thought to himself, it would be best if it were his brothers or sisters who did it. That way he would have to pay less in compensation. When Reed arrived on the 11th floor with the patrol, what he saw was a scene of people in the banquet hall fighting and trampling one another for food. Chapter 30 Cruise Crisis 20. He was instantly furious and fired a few shots erratically with the patrol guards' guns. Ah! At the sound of gunfire, most people immediately crouched down holding their heads and screamed. Among them, several standing on the outer edge were hit by bullets. And some unfortunately died on the spot. Everyone be quiet. Right now every person on this ship will be investigated. Those who set fire to the warehouse and committed such heinous acts must be punished. Reed had a gun and 5,000 loyal patrolmen. On his turf, no one dared resist. They could only cooperate with the investigation. Some company bosses who usually dominated the outside world now cowered in corners like quail. Unfortunately, at the time of the incident all the cameras on the deck had been destroyed. Reed looked at the leader and scolded. Are the people under you all useless? The monitor stopped showing images and none of you reported it? The leader wiped the sweat from his head and explained, Young master, it's not entirely their fault. Mainly because we're at sea right now, the signal is sometimes good and sometimes bad. This happens often. Usually it clears up after about half an hour. So they didn't pay much attention. Didn't pay much attention? Who's going to compensate for the lost supplies because they didn't pay much attention? You? You go fishing for me right now and catch enough to feed 100,000 people for 20 days go. The leader immediately lowered his head and didn't dare speak again, not wanting to provoke the young master with unstable emotions. Seeing the leader looking so pathetic, Reed wanted to kill someone again. Fortunately, Jiang Xingyan talked him down. He looked at the man in charge and ordered, What are you still doing here? If the first floor's surveillance doesn't work, Then go check the second floor. If the second floor doesn't work, check the third. I don't believe every frequency band's cameras are useless. Ah. Yes. I'll go right now. Unfortunately, although the second floor surveillance wasn't tampered with, there were simply too many people coming and going during that time frame. And they didn't find any clues. They questioned everyone who seemed suspicious, but still had no concrete evidence to prove they were the arsonists. The swarm of brain-eating worms began quietly growing again. While the patrol team were bathing after putting out the fire, the worms used the water flow to crawl into their bodies and gradually take over their minds. After Jiang Mian and Fu Yunhan returned to the room, Jiang Mian closed his eyes and happily dealt with the large pile of supplies harvested from the farm. Fu Yunhan, however, couldn't fall asleep. He kept thinking to himself about who had set him up. He thought of many people, but he never once considered Jiang Mian, who had been in the same room. Watching the now largest brain-eating worm farm, she felt a warm, satisfied pleasure. She had the lead brain-eating worm give orders to the others, telling them to leave the food. And only then did Jiang Mian put the food into the stasis space. Because the breeding space wasn't static, the frozen goods she received inside had partially thawed, but fortunately, it had only been a few hours, so the items inside wouldn't have gone bad. After collecting the frozen goods, Jiang Mian finally turned her attention to the pile of gold. She examined the gold carefully. There were no hallmarks, but the gold was real, and the purity was relatively high. Staring at the full 20 cubic meters of gold, Jiang Mian breathed heavily. With these things, Mom will never have to worry about me going hungry again. Thanks to heaven for this gift. Thanks to the Fullman family. Thanks. She carefully stored away those treasured gold items, then began placing snacks and other food, putting the water with the previously collected water. After she finished sorting all kinds of things, it was already 10 in the morning. Jiang Mian could only hear her stomach growling. Fu Yunhan was no longer in the room, he must have gone out. When Jiang Mian stepped outside and looked down the corridor, she saw that the number of people fishing had increased. Perhaps because the warehouse had burned down. Workers who used to choose to fish only at night had started hauling in catches during the day as well. But their fishing speed was truly terrifying. The fishermen all exclaimed that they must be cheating. Any fishing net they threw over was already completely full after just 30 minutes. That speed was nothing short of extraordinary. Many people were filming videos there, admiring their fishing skills, planning to post them online once they reached the island and had a signal. Jiang Mian watched the fish they were catching and strongly suspected that these fish were also infected with brain-eating worms. At the rate they were fishing, none of the passengers on board had gone hungry. Instead, it steadied the passengers' minds. However, before they realized it, these passengers had already been replaced at their core. Just as Jiang Mian returned to her room, there was a knock on the door. Outside stood a staff member, pushing a food cart and smiling at her. "Miss, would you like a meal?" Jiang Mian didn't even open the door, and said warily, "No thanks, we don't need any." Then she heard the sound of high heels hitting the floor, and the same question rang out beside her. "Sir, would you like any food?" "Kumein. What are you doing?" Jiang Mian heard a sucking sound. It was eerily like the noise of a brain-eating worm devouring someone's brain. Before long, the staff pushing the meal cart came out, and the man in the room watched them leave with a smile that seemed measured with a ruler. Suddenly, the man's gaze turned in Jiang Mian's direction. Jiang Mian closed the door, leaned against it, and covered her racing heart. "This is bad, it seems like I somehow caused them to evolve faster." Just then, the sound of a room card unlocking the door could be heard. After Fu Yunhan used the room card to unlock and pushed a few times, he found the door wouldn't open. He froze for a moment. His expression changed instantly as he wondered if something had happened inside. At that moment, the door was pushed open from the inside. What appeared was Jiang Mian's not-so-good complexion. "You're back. I have something to tell you." After Fu Yunhan went into the room, Jiang Mian spoke. "I've noticed something off about the staff here. Have you noticed their smiles are all identical, as if measured out? It's terrifying. And when they talk to you, their eyeballs may be looking at you, but there's not the slightest flicker of emotion. They don't seem like living people at all." Fu Yunhan nodded. This was also what he wanted to tell Jiang Mian. He planned to move upstairs to live. The people on the upper level seemed to know something. When he scouted earlier, he found they had stockpiled a lot of water and food, and even had a separate kitchen. On the contrary, those ordinary tourists knew nothing. They ate food from the sea, used water filtered from the sea, like test subjects. The two went to the hotel room manager and said they wanted to upgrade their room. For customers, hotel staff who want to make money would generally not miss the chance, but here they needed to go through a review. Fortunately, the black card Jiang Mian produced was enough to prove their capability. The person in charge quickly assigned them a room, and the two of them finally moved up to the 14th floor. Sure enough, upon arriving here, one could tell that the people inside felt more alive. At the very least, they no longer wore that identical, eerie smile.